reconvene the Board of Education budget hearings. If you will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. We open this evening with public participation. Has anyone signed up, Mr. Sugar? Would anyone like to speak? Okay, we will close the first opportunity of public participation and move to the discussion of the superintendent's budget, grades 6 through 12.
Awesome. We're excited tonight to present to you the secondary proposal. Similar to our approach last night, we are taking it programmatically, and we will present it same format, same style, same information, referring to your budget book as we go along. And so the first slide I want to show you is the October 1st enrollment report for Schaghticoke. You should have slides in front of you for Schaghticoke. Audience, there are slides if you would like them as well. And again, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade was on your left-hand side. The actuals from June the 1st is the first column. That's 2019, before school let out. And then the projected for the 1920 school year was 294 6th graders, 322 7th graders, 327 8th graders, for a total of 943. As of October the 1st of this year, we had 292 6th graders, 323 7th graders, 325 8th graders, for a total of 940 students. That's the October 1st count, and I remind you that that's what we base all of our numbers on and the staffing projections. So, at this time, we're going to start with instruction, and Mr. Corporal is going to take us through that.
So this, the presentation for middle school is very similar to that of elementary. So I've spoken a lot about the elementary side. I'm just going to transition slightly. I won't read from the slides. I'll tell you what's different about the middle school programming and how it builds on elementary. Okay, so as you know, the time at Schaghticoke and any middle school is a time of transition for kids. They're moving from childhood to adolescence, so we're looking at the whole child no matter what age level we're in. But here, we're paying special attention to the dramatic changes that kids are going on in kids' lives. They're starting to begin to identify with interests, and it's our role as a middle school team to help them identify what they like to do and their strengths in areas of academics and start to bridge those two. Teachers at this level are responsible for the same level of content as elementary, but they're a bit more specialized, meaning that when I think about literacy, for example, we have 6th grade teachers who have a reading block and a writing block at 42 minutes each. Two separate teachers. When we get to 7th and 8th grade, those blocks are at 42 minutes, but the reading and writing are merged together. So it's one block of 42 minutes for reading and writing. Kids at this level begin to gain a lot of choice, especially in areas of world language, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and mathematics. The same structures are in place in terms of curriculum. We're looking at programmatically curriculum, instruction, professional learning, assessment, and data analysis, just like we were doing at the elementary level. So that whole plan, implement, reflect is still in effect throughout middle school and high school. In language arts, we have, we're in year 3 of implementation of the Columbia Teachers Reading and Writing Project. That is our core curriculum area for both reading and writing. We have full units of study right now in grades 6, 7, and 8. We had to build it over time at the middle school because you may recall that Teachers College released them in segments, which was nice because we were able to release the teachers with the coach and help them unwrap units of study and plan for implementation over time. Over the last few years, and you'll see again in this budget, we're requesting additional funding for classroom libraries to support specifically book clubs that take place for the first time in grades 6, 7, and 8 and require multiple copies of the same text. And not only that, but at various reading levels and an interest level so that kids can read the same book together and discuss it. Right now, the goal is to have enough class sets for kids to transition from text to text within book clubs and ideally be able to bring them home at some point. Right now, we're definitely not in that place. We're just beginning to build the foundations of what we have. In mathematics, yesterday I talked about the elementary program, and at the middle school, connected math is what builds on investigations at the elementary level. So same premise, we're building on foundational skills, but here at the middle school, we're looking at application more intensely, and algebra and geometry come into play, whether you are experiencing it through a pure algebra course or a geometry course, or even in our basic math courses in 6th, 7th, and 8th. All of the topics are touched upon to ready kids for New Milford High School. Our central focus in math here is also on problem solving and reasoning. And I just want to remind you that we are working on small group instruction across the district in every academic area. So in math, it takes the form of math workshop, just as it does at the elementary level. So there is not a math coach at Schaghticoke, unfortunately. So the math department is working as hard as they can to implement small group instruction. They're working closely with the new data coach who just showed them the new math map growth assessment, and they're breaking that data down to form small groups. There is a literacy coach at Schaghticoke. If I could just back up for a second, that literacy coach is responsible for leading professional learning for both reading, writing, and also does the integration of coaching with the social studies department. In science, it's the same premise as the elementary level. We're using those correct units of study that are aligned to the national science standards. All of the teachers at Schaghticoke have the highest level of training in the standards, which is wonderful to have. So they've begun to implement the first unit of study in grade 6. Grades 7 and 8 will be implementing their first unit next year. So you'll see some supplies in the budget that are allocated for those units, as well as a second unit in grade 6 going into next year. Currently, even though we've had teacher position filled in the science department, we don't have someone there currently. So one of our assistant principals has been working really hard with the literacy coach to do some cross-referencing of standards, a crosswalk from the old standards to the new, and take a look at curriculum with that department. In the area of social studies, again, we're continuing our work aligned to the Connecticut standards for social studies. The focus in grade 6 is on world regional studies, and in grade 7, just on different parts of the world. And in grade 8, we change over to 18th and 19th century America. What we've done a really nice job, I think, of doing is integrating the writing that's happening in the writing classrooms in grades 6, 7, and 8 with the help and support of the literacy coach. We've embedded assessments along the way in 6, 7, and 8 in social studies to help kids see that writing is not only happening in writing class, but across content. And so the social studies department and the team there have been working really hard at accessing primary source documents and assessing their writing through social studies. And again, they're doing some small group work, and they're working on citation of evidence. Now, it's also important to note that 1/3 of the social studies department, the teachers in that department are within their first 3 years of teaching, and we've had 4 new staff in the English Language Arts department. So it's been wonderful to have the coach be able to go in and work with those teachers, help them understand the curriculum and model how to implement, as well as help them with running records assessment, because that's not something you come out of school being able to do. So that's been a real wonderful addition. In terms of world language, this is the first time that students get to choose to take a world language. Spanish or French are offered, and you may recall that when we changed the graduation requirements, if a student receives a score of 80% or higher in Spanish A and B or French A and B, they can transfer 1 credit over to the high school. Here, the focus is on communication skills, understanding, speaking, reading, and writing, and they work in split PLCs, so the teachers are, there's French teachers and Spanish teachers together, which are nice because the standards do align in listening, speaking, thinking. So they're discussing strategies for implementation and support for students.
Thank you. Our staffing slide at the secondary level looks a little bit different than what you saw last night for the elementaries. So as Mr. Corporal mentioned, in 6th grade, we have 6 teachers teaching writing and reading, three of each. There are 3 teams, and then you can go down the list on the left-hand side and see the math, the science. There's an extra teacher in math because of the other courses that are being offered. And then for 1920, you will see an average class size with a range, and that's information that Dr. Longo shares with us. Central office sends it down to us based on all of the numbers of sections that he has. And you won't see a projection for the 2021 because they haven't done scheduling yet there. So if you have any particular questions on the range, I know that Dr. Longo could answer that better than I. And that's what you see, the staffing stays the same.
Can I ask a quick question about this? In the teacher contract, they're not supposed to have more than 25 students in a class. Is that only for the elementaries?
Yes.
Because okay, so it doesn't account
It doesn't account, I'm sorry.
for middle school.
No. What it does say, and those are guidelines in the teacher's agreement, they're not cut in stone.
Okay.
So it says, these are guidelines,
Right.
25 is the elementary level. When you get to the secondary level, for instance, at the middle school, that it will, I believe the language says between 100 and 125, like on a
Students.
team.
Okay.
And then that gets distributed.
Thank you.
But those are guidelines.
Okay, we'll move on to fine and performing arts. In music, we've written general music curriculum in grades 6, 7, and 8. We offer general music in grades 6 and 7. We do not have to offer it in grade 8, and at this time we don't, but we do have the curriculum ready. All of our curriculum builds off the K-5 create, respond, evaluate strategies and skills. And at the middle school, we begin to build a focus on music awareness. We also offer orchestra, band, wind ensemble, chorus, advanced chorus, alongside general music. So our PD that we hold around the curriculum is generally done by teachers within the department. And again, you've heard me say this with the elementary, because these departments are really supporting each other, it's because we don't have another person to come in and kind of support their work. So we tend to find someone from the outside and pay them to come in and do PD when we have PD days, or if there is a desire for a teacher to learn something new to enhance their practice. Visual arts, we have updated our curriculum in grades 6 through 8, and that builds off the elementary, same situation, building off the national standards and the state adopted standards. The professional learning is supported by teachers, through teachers, same as music. It's job embedded. We have, at the middle school, there's one head teacher who oversees all of unified arts. So that person's responsible for the visual arts, music, PE, health, and Project Lead the Way. So you could see that it would almost be impossible for this person to plan professional learning for all of those departments in a cycle. But there is someone who's in that seat who tries to do their best to offer support.
I'm sorry, what does that person cover? What areas? What
So
subjects?
that person covers unified arts, so that includes all of the visual arts, music, PE, health, and Project Lead the Way,
Not PA.
and PA.
And PA.
Yes, thank you. For health, we spoke about the shared teacher who is spread across 3 schools yesterday. He is responsible for also implementing the 6-8 curriculum at Schaghticoke. The health curriculum at Schaghticoke focuses on much of the same thing, but at a level that adolescents could take in and better understand. There's a lot of information about relationships and self-advocacy, just like at the elementary level. The health curriculum is aligned to state and national standards. As I said, 6-8 have been updated, and it builds over time on its concepts. And that's really all there is there about health. We are looking to see if it would be possible to support the health programming with maybe DARE in the future, but we're still in talks about that, and we're trying to work it out, so that may or may not happen. And in physical education, again, our 6-8 curriculum has been updated here as well. It's aligned to the national standards and the state standards. Once you leave the elementary school, it's not as focused on skill attainment. It's more on manipulation of ball handling and movement. Same focus on upper and lower body strength and the mile run. And our PD tends to focus on how kids are doing in their units of study and on the physical fitness exam. So they have professional learning as a department. Project Lead the Way begins to be offered to students in grades 7 and 8. It begins an engineering track for students if they're so interested. It's a national program, so it has its own curriculum, and teachers who teach the course must go through training in order to teach any new units of study. So there is one teacher currently at the middle school who teaches the course, and it's one time in a 6-day rotation that students get to experience it in 7th and 8th. Questions on that?
One day and 6 days.
Rotation.
So how many days would they get in this class in I call it a semester, in the fall? Yeah.
So it's semester-based. So in a 45-day quarter, there's a 6-day rotation. So they would meet once every 6 days for the semester. And that math,
7 and a half, 8 days.
7 or 8 times.
so, yeah, about eight times. And then, of course, in the winter, if there's snow days, then we push out the semester. So they would still have those days.
So we're looking at how we can add more time to the schedule for these things, and we've embarked on a discussion to begin speaking with the staff, maybe by the end of this year, to bring something forward to the board for institution in a year, to maybe change the schedule so that there could be more time built in. Because what's happening right now is that once in a 6-day cycle is nice, and it exposes kids to it, but we're not getting through as many units of study as we would like kids to have exposure to. And then we don't know if that's prohibiting them from maybe entering into Project Lead the Way at the high school or not. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining a robust program in this area. So we're looking to enhance that in the future.
That's where my question was going. It ties into STEM and all of that. and
Yes.
It's an area we need to focus on.
Now, is there any collaboration from this teacher to the program at the high school?
Yes.
There.
So they meet a few times a year and talk about the alignment of curriculum. I also meet with them, and we have a very generous donor who funds a lot of the major equipment
I was
for
just
Project
going
Lead
to
the
ask
Way
about that.
at the middle school and the high school. And so they discuss a lot about what equipment they have, what could be moved down to the middle school, what the middle school may need if the high school's all set. They talk about alignment, and in a lot of our discussions, what comes up is they wish kids had more exposure to the content at Schaghticoke to be able to decide whether or not it was for them, even before entering the high school. So we're taking all this into consideration, and we're going to see what we can do in the future. Practical arts, it really focuses on, there's one course at the middle school, it's in that same rotation that we just talked about. It focuses on food handling and sanitation, there's food production equipment in there, there's, that kids learn to use, and the sewing machines are here because they actually have a unit that they do that involves using the sewing machine and sewing, learning how to sew in general.
What's the feedback from the students on that course, the PA?
So it's interesting, I'm actually hearing more from the students at the high school about the desire. We ran wingman training recently with the student body, and Mr. Chabrew, myself, and Ms. Skorlik heard from kids that they are interested in seeing more culinary options. And so it would be interesting to see if over time we can make a pathway between the middle school and the high school and maybe change what practical arts looks like somewhat at the middle level to be maybe more culinary based, or maybe separating them out. I don't know. The sky's the limit if we could create a pathway to it. The kids at the middle school seem to enjoy it, but they have, the choices that they have really are practical arts or Project Lead the Way. That's the choice that they make. And so you're either really
One or the
into
other.
Project Lead the Way or you're really into practical arts. Like, most kids aren't like on the fence about what they want to do.
Well, not anymore. They now, it used to be in 8th grade, you had to choose, right? If you wanted
Yes.
to do PA or Project Lead the Way. And this is the first year that they decided, no, you're still going to continue to do both.
Yeah, you're gonna get exposure.
Can I ask a question before we go on
Sure.
from practical arts? So last year, when we had to make some forced cuts after town council and board of finance reduced the budget, one of the things that was put up for a cut is PA. I would really like to know, and if you don't have that information now, maybe you can get it to us before we meet again next week. There obviously was some data behind that. I'm sure that wasn't just plucked out of thin air. And so I'm wondering if we can have some of that data about why that was something that was offered as a cut, so that we can kind of mull over that information a little bit.
So I wouldn't, let me start by saying, a lot of it had to do with the actual lack of curriculum in that content area. It hasn't been written in a while, and when you take a look at, there are national standards that we can align it to, but it hasn't been written. And so that individual course is working off of a syllabus that's been around for a while. And as I said earlier, it would be nice to transition it into a pathway.
It's my understanding, I completely agree with you. I could, that, there is such limited time at the high school for that course, for them to really delve into making some really great meals. Right now, they're having to fit everything into what was a 40-minute
42
class,
minute.
once every 7 days. It's very kind of hard to to kind of gain ground. But they are obviously functions that we want our kids to be able to do, right? To be able to
Yes.
make nutritious meals. I'm wondering what the trend is in this area between other schools. Is this PA concept, home ec concept in middle schools going by the wayside because they are making more choices available in high school? Are we one of the only schools to still offer PA in middle school? Because from some of the information that I have heard is that it's not, you're not finding PA anymore. It's
actually
things that
difficult to
people.
even get the certification now
Sorry?
from the state. It's actually difficult to get the certification from the state because of the way that it's arranged right now. And as we talked about earlier, the state of Connecticut is making some major changes in the area of career readiness and skill-based work readiness. And as they're doing that, they're making some of the courses that used to be kind of a variety of sorts, like adding maybe 2 or 3 different topic areas together, and they're pulling those apart and making them more laser-like focused. And they're giving us the ability to do that. So that's why I say, instead of practical arts being maybe a range of things that kids are being exposed to and being able to do, there may be an option, an opportunity for us to look at, can we have a culinary pathway? Can we have a pathway that works with maybe, I'm just going to throw out maybe fashion design that goes along with sewing, something that's more of a, like at this point, a draw because it's a single focus that gets kids
I agree.
interested and hooked early.
I agree, and I also know that the PA class also focuses on economics, budgeting
Yes.
for your household. And I do know that the students do get that in the high school. Isn't that a required class?
It is.
So-
Personal finance.
Yes, so that is something that kids are required to take in high school. I full-heartedly agree with that because they need to understand what credit can do to you if you're not careful and all that stuff. So, thank you, because, it's.
I think the power in this conversation is exactly why we need to do our strategic planning, because if we look at the profile of the graduate and what we've been working on with the middle school and the high school, and what are our threads, what are our area of focus, and it needs to be done, because we can't just do course by course. We have to see, okay, we are going to focus on these things and do them, have vertical alignment and really get organized.
Yeah, because my whole point is, why are we offering something that's so antiquated?
It's really now just a survey course, and I think kids are getting benefit from it, as you're describing, but I think we can make changes that would ultimately start a path for kids.
To that point, to expand upon that, I think that your mentioning of the strategic plan, just in general, is something that we've had to push aside far too long. And when these conversations come out at budget time, it's very difficult for us, as hard as we do try, to be pulled into what you're saying, why you're saying it. I think if we have a larger conversation, it makes it a little bit more fluid as to where we're going, because we do need those conversations. And some of this is antiquated. I mean, some of this, change is not a bad thing.
It's not.
If we're all on the same page.
It's not, and if you look at the
So I
bottom.
hope that makes it through the budget process.
And if we do look at the bottom line, that program does cost us $100,000.
But I like that if you go in the culinary path, we do have in our community a culinary school.
Yes.
So it makes sense
Yes.
to tie into the community.
Yeah. And I was at the state with Linda Skorlick and a group from the high school around an opportunity for New Milford and for participating school districts. Literally, if you went to this seminar to learn about how the state could support you in giving you training on how to create further pathways, they would then give you the option to have a sign-off to be part of a cohort. We're anxiously awaiting to hear from the state. Actually, today I reached out to see if they had a response of what cohort we'll be in and if we've been accepted. If that happens, they're going to be able to provide us with the tools to engage stakeholders strategically and specifically, because we've already engaged with, we had the head of the Economic Development Commission meet with us, and I had them meet with the entire Perkins group that we have together, coming up with writing the grant and talking about ideas for the future. And we asked her to connect us with members in the community that would help us with job shadowing and internship experiences. But what I learned from the experience of speaking with people from the state and experts in the area around working with community agencies you have to make sure that you have a definition for what a job shadow constitutes. They're going to give us all of that so that the community members who are willing to take on a job shadow fully understand what taking on a student means and what that looks like, and we share the same idea, and kids will have those same experiences. And so that's something that as a team, we were incredibly interested in. So regardless, we're hoping that we could get in the cohort and start those discussions early so that we can bring it back and say, what is it possible that we can offer, and have the Economic Development Commission chair really help us to get agencies and businesses and non-for-profits that are interested in taking on our kids because they have interest in going to their locations to learn, to have that happen. It was exciting. We saw job shadowing as an option. We saw internships, like around a path. So every freshman goes to a career fair. Every sophomore does a job shadow. Every junior does an internship. So we were really excited about that, and so we're hoping we could build that in. But that's a 3 to 5 year phase-in, so it won't happen overnight, but that's why we're anxious to start the conversation soon. So this is one of those things. And computer education, kind of along the same line, currently our kids are going through a basic computer course to learn basic computer skills. But the wave of the future in the state of Connecticut is letting us know that we have to make a change over to learning more about, from practical computer use to more computer programming. So we're looking at coding and instituting some basic computer principle courses. We're supposed to have courses aligned or offerings happening K-12 in computer science. So you'll see we're going to have to make a move to adjust some of our courses that we offer at the middle school to better align with the courses we already offer at the high school around computer science over time. So we'll have to talk about a plan for that. Oh, I'm sorry.
To jump back to practical arts, can they do practical arts and Project Lead the Way at Schaghticoke
They
together?
go together.
Yes.
They can do that both?
Yes.
Yeah, we have it set up where the students will take practical arts for one semester and Project Lead the Way the other. Years ago, probably a good 4 years ago, we had it as they would try each and then they would choose for 8th grade which one they want, and we just thought it was very important to give both courses to them. And an important clarification on your question about the sections and Project Lead the Way. 2 years ago, we offered it once in a rotation, but our scheduling team this past year, we're able to condense some study halls, so now we do offer it twice in a 6-day. So I do want to make that correction. So instead of, I knew something wasn't right when we did that math. So twice in a 6-day for 7th grade semester, and then twice in a 6-day for 8th grade a semester. So they're meeting about 14 times.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Sounded low.
I think many of the people sitting here understand my advocacy for skills, practical arts, for those people who may not be college bound. For the last 2 years I've sat here again, everybody knows that that's a gap I think we have here in our system. So I'm glad to hear that, and I like hearing that these study halls are condensed. We give them a little more time even in these kind of areas because we're missing something if we don't cover this. College education, going to college is a great thing, but there's a lot of people that
Help you pay your
don't
way
go.
through college.
Don't, and Mr. Corporal and I have had a lot of conversations. I'm going to start to see a lot of curriculum over the fact that we're seeing now the skill set that's required to come out of school, not go to college, and yet work in our more advanced technology areas, whether it be for manufacturing and so on. Everything is computerized today.
Across the state, Connecticut is becoming more of a skill-based economy. We talked a lot in that meeting I went to last week about how AP was a real big push for a long time, advanced placement courses, and not that it's not important, it's still important, but taking a look at all kids and what skill sets they might want to acquire while they're in school so that they have options coming out of school. It doesn't have to be skill-based or college, it could be skill-based and college, and what are we doing? How are we looking at all of those aspects of the child and giving them opportunities to go out and serve their community while they're still in high school, to learn about civic responsibility, which is critical too. But if I can go back to computer education for a minute, that computer science is really embedded in every job now across our state, across the nation. automation, robotics. We're starting to play with that a little bit. We have some after-school clubs in robotics. We have the robotics team that we're forming at the high school and the drone club. There's a high level of interest for students. We saw a large number of women competing at the high school and winning awards in computer science after instituting a course for 1 year. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in our district around computer science. We just need to build off of what we have, specifically at the middle school level. We offer it through Project Lead the Way for kids who are in science enrichment at the younger levels, so we're meeting criteria there, but we just have a gap. So we need to start discussing how we're going to make a move to make an offering for a course at the middle school that fits the need around computer science.
Okay, let's go back to practical arts. At that Schaghticoke level, you either take that money, it's a lot of money for that course, you either make it good. If it's just a survey, why not start it at the high school and start the thread through the high school years? It's either, the way it is now, it's not worth the money that's done to it if it's just a survey course, is my point. So either put a good curriculum in there and lead it up to the high school, or drop it and start at the high school.
Well, that takes time, but I
Oh,
agree.
yeah,
I
I
agree.
understand.
That's, we're saying the same thing. It's going to take a
Right.
while to institute it and find out exactly what that pathway should be. But
Okay,
currently,
yeah.
we're not there yet.
Stepping.
Same thing as before, these are your art, health, beauty, music, practical arts, Project Lead the Way, and computer ed teachers. There's no change in staffing there. And you can see the ranges for the 18-19 year, and then it's a little bit different as it was on the other side for other slide for 19 and 20. And if you have any specific questions, Dr. Longo, I think can address those for you.
All right, gifted and talented. We spoke of the other half of the same teacher. She's split between two schools, Sarah Noble and Schaghticoke. If you may recall, at Sarah Noble, she is servicing 38 students. Here at Schaghticoke, she's servicing 48 students. She's still administering the same assessments, mostly the Torrance and a little bit of the COGAT, mostly the new students who come into district. So we test all the ELs too who come into district, not only with home language survey, but we look at, see if they're talented and gifted too. And we're focusing on curriculum extensions at the middle school level. She still does identification here, as I said, programming. She implements tests, does data analysis, and holds parent meetings. Unfortunately, once you leave the middle school, there's no science enrichment that's separated out, but there's wonderful opportunities at the high school that we'll speak of next. But there's the breakdown of how many students she's currently servicing in talented and gifted at Schaghticoke, and those numbers are the most recent numbers because we just came off of a cycle of identification in both buildings. EL and bilingual, we have a bilingual program at Schaghticoke. We have 20 Spanish speakers that we've had now for a few years at Schaghticoke. Students are coming up from Sarah Noble, leaving the bilingual program. Some are eligible to exit. Some are entering into New Milford as new bilingual students in Spanish, so they're entering in the program. We do a wonderful job with meeting kids where they are, helping them to acquire English in this program while holding on to their native language. And it's done in the form of a pull-out model with some push-in for students so that they're getting support both in the bilingual classroom, and then the teachers are supporting kids as best they can when they're in their classes in each academic area. The coordinator this year that we have on the Title III grant has been instrumental in attempting to really provide professional learning at every level and meet with this team of EL and bilingual teachers to support their needs for professional learning to help support kids.
I have a question about this.
Sure.
What is the reason why we can't supply Spanish books for these students for their regular ed classes? Because I know that in the past, just being at Schaghticoke, it was really hard to explain concepts to students when they don't speak English, and everything that we can offer computer-based is in English. There wasn't anything in Spanish.
We've been working on that over the last few years. Actually, in the budget for Schaghticoke this year, we've looked at the social studies department and what they're offering in terms of online support. And now those texts will be leveled so all kids have access, and we're looking to see how many languages they'll be offered in. they do have the ability to order Spanish textbooks. They just need to contact my office and let me know that there's a need. The EL coordinator has been purchasing them over the last few years to make sure that students who are new to the country and aren't yet speaking English and understanding English have something in their native language for us to work from. This year, we're also administering the DRA2 in Spanish and we're giving them the running record in the DRA2 in English to get a better indication of where their reading level lies so that we can instruct them in their native language and see, are they growing more in their native language or more in English, and what might be happening if they're not? Where do we need to instruct? So we're getting stronger in each of these areas, and I really have to say it's having that .49 coordinator has made a huge difference in helping to support the teachers, because they're really singletons in the classroom trying to do their best, so
So
we
you're able
can.
to supply also the math workbooks in Spanish?
Yes, the math workbook does come in Spanish from
Okay.
Pearson. Yeah, most do at this point. If we have a program, it's easier for us to attain, but we've moved away from programs for the most part in certain areas, so in those areas, if it's a reader or if it's an online subscription, we've been trying to acquire it in their native language for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That slide just speaks to what Mr. Corporal said, that we have one.
It's very easy, simple to
It's a nice
understand.
slide to make.
Laura?
Good evening, everyone. You'll see as we progress through the schools and the levels that there are some common threads. There's some common threads in service delivery, there's some common threads in some of the terms and actually programs that you're going to see. But the one biggest factor I think that we shift to when we start going through this pre-adolescent, adolescent age is that we're really looking at the social emotional needs as well as the whole child. We're no longer looking at early intervention, we're looking at how we can continue to close that gap. So with that being said, LRE, least restrictive environment, is still a mandate, as is IDEA and all of the mandates that go along with that, which we highly honor and we follow through with our IEPs. So if you look at I'm going to progress down to multisensory reading. We've seen that term before, and it is a highly data-proven effective instruction. Right now at Schaghticoke, there are 36 students who are receiving multisensory reading. Last night, we looked at Sarah Noble. There are over 70 or 80 students receiving multisensory reading. So what that's telling us is that we're closing the gap, and fewer children at this level now are requiring that intensive specialized instruction. Again, they're highly trained teachers who have been trained by either Orton Gillingham or Wilson or a variety of different vendor programs. So the other piece that we have is our behavior intervention program. Right now at Schaghticoke, we have one program, highly individualized, very small class size. It's supported by our behaviorists, it's supported by our psychologists, our social workers, and our guidance staff. Our goal is always to get them back into the classroom and to keep them, in general ed as much as possible with support. If you look here too, I do note ESS. I'm going to talk about a little bit farther down into our slides, but that is a program also that is new to the middle school this year. Okay, co-teaching.
Can I ask you one
Sure.
question? So the ESS program that the high school has is starting to be somewhat mirrored at the middle school?
It is.
That's great.
We're starting to see some really encouraging data that I'm going to share with you next Tuesday. And what we did was, if you remember last year, we had a pilot down at our K2 school in Northville.
Yep.
And after some data searching and really looking at what our middle school needed, even though we can't duplicate the program in every building, we decided to move that program up to the middle
I
school.
think that's fabulous. So out of the 9 slots that you have available, how many are filled at the middle school?
Right now, Dr. Longo, I'd say 8 are filled.
In
Some-
ESS?
Yes.
I'm really glad to hear that. That's great.
It is. It's, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but we're really encouraged by it. So that's our behavior intervention program. We do see, some students responding to the program. Others are responding more to a behavior intervention plan in general education, along with support from our behaviorist. So it really depends on the IEP. So co-teaching continues to thrive. We have, I want to say, 36 29, I'm exaggerating, 29 co-taught sections at Schaghticoke. Again, collaboration with general ed and special ed meets the needs of diverse learners as well as typical students. So that is definitely programmatically something that we are very proud of and that will continue to support, and it really does meet the IEP needs. And what we see is that over time, the number of co-taught sections increase. And so what that tells us again is that when we get to the high school, Mr. Shagru has a number of them because the children are becoming more autonomous. They're using the tools that we're teaching them, and so they can generalize and get into the co-taught classes with support. So those are all very encouraging signs for us that children are learning with the tools and strategies that we've been implementing. We also have 2 ILC centers, individual learning centers at the one at the middle school this year, I'm sorry. Again, it meets the needs of more cognitively impaired students who might be on the spectrum, and it's more individualized. They focus on activities of daily living, life skills, as well as getting into the general ed classroom, which is very important. Speech and language services are continued to support our students, push in, pull out, as well as social skills development, which is very important at this age as well. Again, continuing on, our psychologists, we have 1.4 psychologists at the middle school. We have 2 full-time social workers.
I'm sorry, how many social workers?
2. And then this year, starting in this budget, we actually have our substance abuse counselor who we have hired for that position, and they're going to also support the middle school. So it could be through family education, individual education for our students, preventative education, as well as direct counseling for students who are already involved.
And that's 6 through 12, that person starts 6 through 12?
Correct. So it'd be 0.2 one day in a 5-day cycle at the middle school, and then the other 4 days.
And it's 0.8 at the high school.
Correct, yeah.
And it's the same person.
Same
And this
person.
is new.
It
And
is.
you need to just jump in. I
It
think
is.
it's
Great.
fantastic. I'm happy to see that. I wish we had more of it,
I
quite
know.
frankly, because as we know, we all know that the earlier we reach out to this it's crucial. It's crucial. Substance
It
abuse, getting the message out early is really important. And to bring this down to the middle school, I'd love to see another piece of that, quite frankly.
Well, and if you recall, this has been in your budget for 2 years.
I do.
And so finding the right person with the right certification was a real challenge for Mr.
Yeah, there
Shagru
you
and
go.
for me. And we finally did find that person. So we're thrilled, and we want to actually, really get it down to the middle school so that we can start really helping with the students down there. So. Inclusion teacher, department chair at the middle school, similar to what we have at our K-2 schools. Although this person is part-time department chair, .49, and part-time special ed teacher. Same type of role, just that they are doing some co-teaching right now. And then our paraeducators, which we are threaded throughout our entire system, a huge factor in the success of our children.
What about the SPED supervisor? Is that anywhere here?
Yes.
That's coming up later.
It will, and actually the SPED supervisors share between the high school and the middle school, but it is in our staffing.
It is in the presentation.
Right.
Okay, thank you, because that was a new position, and would love to see how that's going.
So contracted services, again, I did speak about the ESS. I'm going to show you some data points on Tuesday when I get into in-depth a little bit more. As we spoke, there are 9 slots available. One of the most positive aspects of this program is that it's not defined by a disability or an ability. It's for all students, so whether they're general ed, 504, or special education, if there's a need, then we refer them for the program. Dr. Longo and I have worked really hard, and we appreciate the board's acceptance of the new policy, but we're in the final stages now of getting a service dog, non-service dog, therapy dog there.
Therapy.
Yeah, so again, another plus for the students, and we're very anticipating some great successes with it. We have a board-certified behavior analyst that supports the students at the middle school. That person also works at the high school. It's a contracted service. And then finally, we have our student care workers who work with our more aggressive, significant students under the, they're hired by Ed Advance.
No mini horses yet in school?
No. Although that is in your policy.
Yep, that's why when you said it, I didn't laugh. It's in our policy.
So here is the demographics for special education at the middle school. We're projecting 139 students, a reduction of 17 students for next year. When we look at the demographics, we are going to be reducing one full-time special education teacher. It's going to be transferred over to Hill and Plain based on the incoming needs, the higher needs at Hill and Plain School for next year.
So that's really just it, that's budget neutral. It's
Budget
just a
neutral.
redeployment.
Right.
Okay.
And on the staffing chart here, Ms. Olson really has gone through most of the changes that you see up there. The substance abuse counselor is going to be shared now with Schaghticoke in the high school, majority of the time at the high school, but a piece of it at Schaghticoke. You will see a decline in the special education teacher line there. We're going to be moving one special education teacher from the middle school to Hill and Plain based on the needs of the students at Hill and Plain. And the rest of it's all neutral.
All right, and just like at the elementary school, we have interventionists at Schaghticoke, the middle school. They do the same exact job. What they're trying to do is targeted instruction and intervention for students at the middle school, which can be a little bit more complicated because students are lacking some foundational skills. They're starting to acquire nonfiction text, and they might not be familiar with it. So the interventionists at this level are looking to build them up in each of these skill areas and support them. So they're still doing diagnostic assessments, creating plans, meeting with teachers, same as elementary. At Schaghticoke, there is one instructional coach assigned to the building, and as I shared with you earlier, that instructional coach covers reading, writing, and the social studies department. Supporting them in their delivery of instruction, curriculum support, and professional learning. Sure.
How come you don't have any tutors to support interventionists?
We do have tutors. They're on the next slide.
Okay.
There are 2 point.
Zero.
Yes, because
Zero.
this came up yesterday as well. Mr. Fela asked the question, how many are there in district?
Right.
And you saw 5 yesterday at the elementary level. There are 2.5 total at Schaghticoke. So total in district, there are 7.5 tutors. The instructional tutors do the same level of support that are done at the elementary level in reading or math. It's really around that tier 2 intervention. So a student struggling in the classroom on a certain concept, they're really not getting it. We see it when they take NWEA. We see it when they're taking their end of that unit assessment, or within that unit, we intervene. We send in the tutor or the interventionist, whoever's available, because of the sheer number of kids who may need intervention at that time, and they support them with some targeted instruction in small group. And then they monitor it, and then hopefully can release students once they've attained the skill.
Do we have a method for monitoring the success of that? Because I personally think the tutors are critical, and for less expense, I'm hoping we're getting a benefit, and it's something worth looking at.
What's difficult for us is filling the positions, to be honest. Because we're looking for certified teachers, which is wonderful, but the rate of pay for the instructional tutor makes it difficult for us to acquire instructional tutors. So oftentimes it takes us a bit of time before we can get someone hired and on the ground and trained to support the interventionists. Without the interventionist in those positions, during the times that we didn't have the instructional tutors, there would be kids that would maybe be on the cusp, that would be serviced by the classroom teacher because there wasn't any level of support. So we're very fortunate to have both because they're needed. And once we started taking a look at students' reading levels and administering running records to see where kids were, and because for years it hadn't been happening, so when we were able to identify that there were large gaps in kids' reading ability, we could really truly recognize the work that needed to be done around intervention and assessment. What we've been doing is charting a course for creating plans. The assistant principals play a large role in meeting with the interventionists and with the teams to review the plans and to see who could be entered and into intervention and exited. And at the building level, I'm working with the data coach right now. We're going to create a dashboard that looks at discipline data, that looks at attendance data, and looks at intervention data. And I'm going to be having, once this dashboard is created with their input, I'll be meeting with the principals. I already meet with them monthly, but we'll be meeting in addition to that monthly meeting together individually to review their data, and I'll be asking them specific questions with their team about the kids who are reappearing on this list without being exited. That tells us that there's a higher level of need of intervention, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing all of our supports to support those kids that are most at risk. So what I don't want to see is kids dropping out, not that this is happening now, but dropping out and us just not knowing if we were applying the right intervention at the right time or not. I want to take the guesswork out of that. We have some really good supports in place in all schools, but we just need to fine tune it, and I think looking at that data regularly will help us get there. So we really benefit from having the tutors, but it's really the interventionists that are our consistent, they're our consistent partners in this work until we can onboard the tutors when we can get them to be hired.
So the tutors, we require them to be certified teachers, but that is not a state requirement, am I correct?
It is not, that's correct.
So that is a board
That's
policy.
correct, correct,
Thank you. Something
Yes.
we want to discuss in the
Yeah.
future.
yes. And then library media, we have one library media specialist at Schaghticoke, and she is focusing on teaching lessons around the shared foundational skills that are built upon from the elementary level. There's a heavy focus on research, so she is working on the same skills that teachers are working on in classrooms and enhancing students' work and skill set around research and writing papers effectively, grammar and other kind of ADA not ADA requirements, but MLA requirements, and starting that process of new learning with kids. I wanted to point out in that library media line at the middle school, you'll see an increase in the library book line. And each year, each of the library media specialists does an audit of the inventory in the library, and so you'll see a request to increase the level of support. Again, any book that goes into the library also helps students to have more choice, even outside of their classroom libraries, which is critical. A lot of the library books are used in class and for independent reading, and we know that the more kids are reading inside and outside of school, their eyes on text, the better they'll perform overall in reading.
What's also great, I think, about the library is that this is when they can start going to the library on their own, not just during their special. They can go during Learn Labs, they can go during study halls and really start to pick the books that they want on their own time. They even have gone and hung out in the library to read during these periods. So it's nice to see that that's happening.
It is wonderful, and I think, when we think about the work of the library media specialist and curating the books, and she works alongside the coach, as you know, for summer reading support. We really want kids to see themselves in books that they take out of the library, and so we're always looking at it from the cultural lens, and can they identify with the characters and see themselves there, because that's very important. So that's what that increase in that line is really for. Our school counselors, they're building upon the work around social emotional learning that takes place at the elementary level. We're beginning to institute Choose Love in each of the schools. I didn't really speak about that yesterday. I'll speak about that more at the district level night. But our school counselors are supporting teachers with that work. They're meeting with students around individual counseling goals, group counseling. They are running 504 meetings and looking over 504 plans, and they're also attempting to do some career investigation. You'll see an increase in the line at Schaghticoke because we have figured out how to link Naviance, you'll be excited about this, at the middle school to the high school. So there's an increase to do that so that we don't have to transfer the information physically from the middle school to the high school, which was a burden on the guidance department at the high school. They did it lovingly, but it was, when we found out that we weren't linked and we had the ability to link, we included that in the budget. It's not a large cost to us, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal to kids to be able to look back. That too? Okay.
It is.
I'll take your word for it, Angie.
Oh, it is.
To be able to look back and see. Yes.
They're used to it.
Yes. So our goal is to make sure that the guidance counselors get some time carved out more often to be able to work with groups of students at the middle school to help them, take the assessments that are in Naviance and get excited about different opportunities they want to have at the middle school, not the high school. So look for that. That's and those are in the budget lines. And at Schaghticoke, we have head teachers and team leaders. The team leaders do a lot of the managerial work around getting budget information together for the principal for different subject areas, holding meetings with teachers to talk about field trips that kids would go on. So a lot of like the nuts and bolts are handled by them. And then the head teachers, what's been really great this year is that one instructional coach has been working with the head teachers in various departments and planning professional learning with them for their departments around small group instruction. So if the coach can't be in there to deliver professional learning, the head teacher feels comfortable knowing that the delivery was prepared together or will be prepared together for when they institute it within their department.
So the team leaders, there are 9 total, 3 per grade to cover the 3 teams.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
And then the head teachers, like if you have your social studies, is that teacher going across the grades? Is that how that works with the head teacher? So the social studies teachers all meet from 6 through 8? So you're gonna have 5 of those?
The head teacher role at the middle school is very similar in terms of structure. They meet by department.
Okay.
Similar to high school. High school is department chairs.
So it's 5 to cover the 5 major departments?
Yes, and the Unified Arts head teacher oversees all of Unified Arts.
Gotcha.
What's challenging about these roles, and we've had some turnover in them, is that the teachers are teaching all day, and we're releasing them now, like on a schedule, to be able to plan professional learning together. But that requires them to think about stepping out of their classroom for a bit to go plan for professional learning and go back in. It's definitely not an ideal situation, but we're trying to make the best out of what we have, because without this and one coach there, it would be very difficult to support every academic area in the way that it deserves to be supported. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got. And then at Schaghticoke, to my right, as you know, Dr. Longo is the building principal. Behind us are he has 2 full-time assistant principals sitting in the audience, and his part-time .4 assistant principal is shared with Northville Elementary School. And he also has a .4 special education supervisor who is shared with the high school. And that's the new position that came up from last year.
So 0.6 of that is going to the high school?
Yes.
And Mr. Corporal did such a great job of taking you through all of that. I don't want to repeat everything, but if you have questions, I certainly answer them. But I do want to point out that the special education supervisor shares the 2 schools, and with that special ed supervisor in both schools, there is a part-time department chairperson too. So there's a .49 department chair at the middle school and also at the high school.
Okay. I'm going to put my athletic director hat on and speak about athletics at the middle school. We're very proud of our student athletes. I think it's very important to note that with all the different opportunities in town, only at Schaghticoke are the students being able to prepare not only for sports, but as a student athlete. So by the time they get to the high school, not only do they kind of narrow down their interests, but at the same time understand what the true life of a student athlete is. We participate with many schools. They're listed there on the PowerPoint. And what's really exciting is that our cross-country team actually runs at the state championship. And these kids really enjoy it so much, and as they go to the high school, they can kind of transition it out. 10 interscholastic sports. We have 11 intramural positions. There's stipends for each of these. On the next slide, we have the breakdown by fall, winter, and spring. Winter being girls basketball and boys basketball. I have the number of student athletes that we have participating. You can see that when the weather's nice and we offer more, we have the students out there. And the spring numbers are based on last year's figure, since we're in winter of 2020 right now. The interscholastic teams travel to other schools, and we also host home contests, both in the fall and the winter. And as you can see, the cross-country and the track numbers are a little higher, whereas some of the other sports, we have a lower number due to participation and the nature of the game and the sport. And again, the spring numbers constitute last spring of 2019. Our intramural numbers are on the next slide there. Again, we have advisors for each. These are the sports that are more relaxed, they're in-house, the interscholastic are competitive, our interscholastic are in-house, and the students also benefit from forming relationships with other students that they may not be friends with during the day. And we do have a nice variety between, having field hockey, soccer, volleyball, and ultimate frisbee.
Dr. Longo?
Yeah.
Could I ask you what the definition, what the months are defined under fall, winter, and spring?
So from the start of the year to November would be the fall,
Okay.
according to how we spread out the sports here. The winter would be the December, January slot. Our basketball games usually end right around the end of January at the middle school.
Okay.
And then the spring sports start up the end of March or so into April and May. And
So
finish the year.
February is still considered winter?
It's considered winter.
So isn't volleyball winter, not spring?
I think it's just the way that it's structured and when we offer them, it's something we can definitely look at. When sixth grade came back to Schaghticoke, I should say, what was really nice is with the sixth grade coming, some of the activities that from Sarah Noble, we were able to have a couple slots, so we were able to increase our offerings, and I think that was kind of part of what happened. But either way, we do have, there's some things not on this slide that are not athletics based, but having the play and having drama club and everything like that, where you definitely have students involved in all the seasons.
Back to interscholastic sports for a moment. Our track and field, we have a significant number of students in those groups, both on the women and the men. Are we meeting the needs of that many students? Are we running into a problem with that many students? And is there something we need to do to make it more comfortable for that many of competitive track and field?
Well, we have a head coach and we do have assistant coaches. And then there's also volunteers that help. We run quite a few of the meets on our home ground, which is really nice. I have a special love for that, not just because I was a runner, but Mr. Wall and I started the middle school cross country and track nearly 20 years ago. And now it's still going and it's going strong. But this was something that wasn't around, and we have a lot of area schools that have kind of bought in. But what's really nice about it is, in basketball you have 5 on a court. With cross country, you have everyone running, and our coaches have been through, the AED and CPR training, and they're very highly qualified. And we do have quite a few teachers and staff at the school that come out for these events. It's nice. You step right outside of your classroom, and you're right there, and you can see a cross country race.
What's our understanding with regard to this number of students progressing over into the high school and competing at the high school level? Do we have the same kind of participation in track and field?
Mr. Lipinski and I have, I think he's behind me. We've had conversations about this. There's definitely some carryover over there. I think what also happens is that middle school, the students are really exploring, and they want to do everything. So they'll do something fall, winter, spring, and then I think by the time they go to freshman orientation and start to look at high school, they start to narrow down. So, and the high school does offer a lot more than we do at the middle school, so I think that plays a role as well. But I feel that we offer quite a bit where students, every student has something that they can do.
How many events, I have one for you.
Yeah.
For track and field, how many events?
So it's...
Because I know it's 50 kids, but it's spread out over...
Right. Some of the students will do 2 events and everything, and that's what's nice about track.
But it's not like you have 50 kids running the 100.
Yeah, they have a sampling.
Have you been to a track meet?
Well, that's true.
There are. Everybody runs the 100. Everybody runs the 100.
Bad example.
Good, bad, or indifferent, they all run 100.
Yeah, so at the high school, you know, with CIAC and everything, there's those standard events. There's much less at the middle school. They have the basic events. They have a high jump and a long jump. They'll have a 100 dash and maybe a 200. They'll have the mile run. And I think they started instituting triple jump because it just looks so cool. And middle school kids, if you watch them do it, it's pretty exciting. So there's enough events where they can go and travel and everyone can do 1 or 2 events, and then you have that camaraderie. And then this last slide here breaks down the athletics budget within Schaghticoke, which is also in the budget book, line by line. You know, our officials come out of one line, and that's for our events throughout the year. Our grounds maintenance is the 54,303. Transportation, which includes not only the interscholastic games, but we also have a unified sports program that you've heard about before over the years, and they do travel. They've gone to Brookfield before. We've hosted, which is really nice. In one of the budget lines, you'll see a slight decrease in a special ed line for transportation, and the reason is that we are able to host more of our unified, which is really exciting because then we can have our community actually see it more often. And in the past, we've traveled, so that's really nice. And then, you know, some of the things included in the supply lines, you know, a lot different than the high school where you have a more robust budget, but in this, you have things like the paint and the lines and the field prep. Uniforms, we turn over within about 5 years, so we are able to have a cycle where we rotate between sports. And Mr. Hibbard, who is the Unified Arts teacher, he also coaches, leader, he also teaches PE. He's been very good about kind of tracking over the years and what we could do to have what we need for students to participate in these activities, and then also, you know, reuse and replenish as we need. And then the track meets registration, that one line is kind of off to the side because we do send students to this meet in the spring, which includes runners and track athletes from around the state.
Do we still offer the late bus?
We do. We offer twice a week the 4 drop-off spots in town, and we have a bus that comes at Schaghticoke at 4 o'clock.
And how is that?
We just offer that twice a week?
We do, yes. It's helpful. We do notice that there's some students that the parents really want to pick them up, so we do have quite a bit of traffic on the afternoon. If you've ever been at Schaghticoke, you know we could use a little more real estate in terms of a parking lot. But we make it work, and the bus is definitely, you know, there's definitely students going to that location. It really depends on the parents' work schedule and whether they can, you know, meet at that spot to pick up. But, you know, having a stop at Hill and Plain is very helpful if there's siblings and everything. So we've definitely found success with that, and that's only been in place for, I think, 3, maybe 4 years.
That's why I was asking when that came about, you know, that was something that we really put out there to try and, you know, offer those opportunities. So I was just curious where we were on that.
And I've worked with the advisors, I have to say, to schedule their events on Mondays and Wednesdays so that this way we could have the kids participate on days when we have the bus, so that this way it just opens up transportation.
Chris, when did Interscholastic Sports come back to Schaghticoke?
It was there when I got there. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm not quite sure.
I know it wasn't there when mine was there, but, you know, that's a gap of time, and I've kind of lost
It
track.
must have come shortly thereafter, because it was there when all 3 of mine were.
Okay.
And mine are only a couple years younger
Okay,
than yours, so.
okay. So it was probably at the high school when
Yeah.
it came back, yeah.
Yep.
So we'll go over the major object code, if you don't mind. I just wanted to mention, since we're talking about busing and activity buses, if there would be a desire for the board to add an additional activity bus. Right now, runs Monday and Wednesdays, I believe. For Thursdays, it's roughly $60 per day.
$60 per
Right.
We used to offer that more, didn't we? Didn't we have it every day initially?
I thought it was
No.
3 days, no?
That's Schaghticoke. Oh, really?
And did we decrease it because there was nobody writing it, or just budgetary?
Well, I think
Can I
Greg's
use
speaking
the high
about
school
the high
still does it
school.
4 days? Yeah. Okay,
Right.
okay.
I'm on the way
I just want to
to-
interject that we do have a homework club van that also, two buses that bring students home for 504 special ed students for academic support after school, so that might be what you're thinking of. That's twice a week.
But I think, I could be wrong, we offered it at the high school and at Schaghticoke. And so, obviously,
Yeah.
the runs were different at each
Right.
school. So-
At Schaghticoke, for the past 5 years, or 4 years, it's been Mondays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
And I don't know about before then,
Right.
but I do know it's always been 2. We haven't had more than 2.
that-
Well,
That's
a
fine.
lot of activities don't take place on Tuesday, right, because of teacher meetings, and so,
Correct.
Right.
and not a lot happen on Fridays
Right.
either. So Thursdays would be a day to consider, because it would open up more days for kids to participate.
And
Or
Dr.
clubs, if they were in sports and clubs. It would
Correct.
be a good club day if, you know,
And a lot of them have to pick and choose because they take
for
place
no
at the
more
same
than
time.
the transportation
You say it's
is.
$60 a day?
Yep, yeah, I bring that up because Dr. Longan, I had conversations and spoke with the bus company about that. The request to add a Thursday activity bus is not in the budget request, but, you know, depending on the calendar is not defined for 2021, but depending on the number of weeks that's in there, you know, that's estimated around $2,500 to add that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So on the major object code, the certified salaries, as you're aware from last night, that's still currently being recalculated. The non-certified, that reduction there reflects 3 less paras. When I say 3 less paras, it's not 3 less paras in 2021. When we built the 1920, which was this time last year, we built in more paras than are actually at Schaghticoke now. Those have been redeployed. That's the main driver there. If you added back those paras, we're at about a 2%, we would be at a 2% increase in that non-certified instead of the negative 509. Going down to the professional services, we didn't discuss this last night, but it affected Sarah Noble as well, just in general education, and that has to do with Chromebooks. So there are no Chromebooks in school locations as there were last year.
Property services we're talking?
In professional services.
professional.
I'm bringing it up here because the actual licenses for those have been budgeted for here in the past. So at Sarah Noble, Schaghticoke, and the high school, there are no the Chromebooks themselves or the associated licenses in the school-based budget for those. They've all been moved to the technology budget. The exception that you'll see in the budget is there are Chromebooks and licenses in special education, and they were left there so we can capture those costs when we go to qualify for excess costs. So they're not all in one, they're all in one bucket now in technology, with the exception of the sped ones.
I have a question to that. I had, and I could be wrong, I had it marked down on page 24 that we had a tech-related supply reduction. Is that part of that, Anthony? $7,200 for $56,500 in gen ed supplies. Is that tied into what you're saying?
Yes.
That's okay, because that's where I noticed it.
Those are the actual Chromebooks themselves.
That would make sense.
Cleaner for us to,
Well-
and you'll see next Tuesday, it's much cleaner.
Right.
For us to monitor and determine what the need is if we have it in one department.
It makes perfect sense. When I saw that, I thought, why are we, what are we doing? So that answers that.
As the superintendent mentioned, you'll see it on the 5-year capital
Yeah.
page, broken out, refreshed versus completely new ones, and how that plays out
You've done
next
a really
week.
good job in that area. I look forward to sharing that.
So that's the bulk of those professional services, the decreases there. In property services, the reduction there just has to do with less repairs to equipment there, and that adjustment was done just based on looking at historical actuals, not necessarily what the school location had year over year, what they actually spent. In the other services, that small reduction, $500, $573 is just less printing and less postage. The supply line, the negative 31, that is the actual Chromebooks themselves. I mentioned Chromebooks when we were at professional services and the licenses. The big driver in supplies there are actual Chromebooks. And so that, less Chromebooks at this location represents about $10,000 of that $31,000 decrease. And the rest of the supply reductions at Schaghticoke are a byproduct of a projected enrollment of 46, I believe, less students there versus this year. In the small change in the capital that's not associated with the 5-year is reduced furniture requests for that location at Schaghticoke. And dues and fees, the small reduction there is based off of taking a look at adjustments based on actual spent in prior years. Take any questions you want on that, or we can wait until we go through by line item, whatever you like.
Yeah, I think, let's go through line item for Schaghticoke and then we'll do the high school. So page 22. Any questions? 23?
Thank you, you answered a lot of questions.
That's exactly, I just said the same thing.
I have a lot of
I
things
said that,
highlighted
just
that
turn that
you're gonna-
page.
Okay, 24?
We have a question about the world language workbooks. How come the increase?
Yes, so as we do, whenever we prepare any budgets, we do an audit. So we look at our Spanish 1A and our Spanish 1B, and you might see over time that the numbers kind of fluctuate. So we were at a point where we needed more Spanish 1A books to replenish versus 1B. And it does come down to inventory, where I have the world language head teacher assist on that. And, you know, we double check by asking every teacher, and so that's the reason for.
And if you look one column over, you see that the request for this year, 1920 of $2,000. If you look over one to the left there, prior year, we spent $38.61. So as Dr. Longo says, it is cyclical. The $2,000 might be good for 1920, but there is an increased demand for funding there for 2020.
Tammy, you had a question?
Yeah, I just have a question about the art supplies going down. Is that just taking an inventory, seeing what you have, and then just
Yes.
realizing that, okay?
Yes.
Don't need any more construction paper. Page 25?
The periodicals, science, were we just not buying science magazines anymore?
That's correct, yeah. That the difference is yeah, the periodicals.
Just curious.
Moving to NGSS and looking at ways that we can support our curriculum, that wasn't necessary this year.
Okay, I just had a pile underneath my table, my daughter loves it, so. That was kind of a personal
I think they
question.
use more web-based too, supplemental.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely.
Anything else on 25?
Tech ed is PLTW.
Yes.
26? $27? $28? $29? Anything else for Schaghticoke? And again, you can ask tomorrow, or next Tuesday or next Wednesday also. Okay, we will move on to the high school.
Have those slides that say New Milford High School on them. You know, I want to thank our team of administrators for all their hard work, our support. Pat has proofed so many slides, and how she still finds things, I don't know, but we really appreciate everybody's hard work. For New Milford High School, the first slide that you'll see was the October 1st enrollment. We had projected, again, the first column on the left, 6/1/19, were the projections, or the actuals, I'm so sorry. And the projections for 1920, 345, actuals on October the 1st. For freshmen, 356. For sophomores, we had projected 347. We actually had 329. For juniors, projected 345. We only had 329. And then again for seniors, we projected that right, 317, and we had 316 on October the 1st. We're going to follow the same format. We're focused on programming. I learned a lot through this process. I hope it's helping you as well. We're going to expedite because many of the things that we have discussed is just at a different level. So she'll just hit the highlights and instructions, same thing in SPED, and then give us time for questions. Okay?
Okay, so we jump right into language arts, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you about the, end of their journey with us in the Milford Public Schools at the high school and what that's about. At the high school, it's really about kids discovering themselves and having opportunities to decide what they want to do for their future. So we're hoping that we're developing them, challenging them, doing the best we can in every arena to give them opportunities that they might not be able to get elsewhere. So that's really what we're striving to do. When we jump into language arts, I just want to remind you, I'm going to just speak about the classes from 2019 to 2022, because as you know, the graduation requirements change beyond that. There are still 4 credits required to graduate in English at New Milford High School. We offer 24 courses in English, 6 core, 18 electives, and they include courses such as children's lit, journalism, science fiction, poetry, the list goes on and on. It's a continuation of the model that is used at the middle school and elementary levels. We're striving to institute more small group instruction with focused feedback on student writing and an intervention. There's book clubs there as well, and there's an alignment to our 6-8 curriculum. And what's been really exciting recently is the introduction of graphic novels course at the high school to align with a unit of study at the middle school in graphic novels. Yes, Joe.
We're going to let you get far. The college essay,
Yes,
is that incorporated in this
it is.
section?
It's in the junior year,
In the junior year?
Yes. The beginning of the junior year with support.
I'm starting to develop that essay, because one of the concerns I know we've seen in the past, and realistically I've seen personally, is we're not getting to that essay, getting far enough through it early on, and I think it's hurting some of our students going on to put that in their Naviance program and off to.
Last year, I met with Mr. Shagru and the head of guidance and the department chair at the high school, and we rearranged where the college essay, it's a narrative essay. It's not their first opportunity to write an essay, but it's the first opportunity they have with guided practice and support from an instructor. So we moved it to I believe the second semester of the junior year with support, and then they have multiple opportunities to fine-tune that essay if they would like to before placing into Naviance to be sent off to colleges.
Thank you.
Can I expand?
For
Exactly.
years.
For years.
Thank you.
You've heard probably
I mean,
a bunch of us, we
yeah.
have said that.
It was,
so-
we
it
made the
was,
move
yes.
last year.
I had a
Yes.
son who applied to college, was accepted to college before
Yeah.
they talked about college
Exactly.
essay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's support too along the way. I guess there's the literacy volunteers come in and support the effort in writing the college essay, and so we realigned when they're coming in too, and then they still come in when they used to come in, so there's a double hit of support along the way. So yes, last year, Ms. Chastain brought it up to me a few times, and we were able to make that move last year. As I mentioned 3 times, it was critical to all of us that it happened.
That son, who's now
And it did.
26, is also now an admissions counselor at college. So at a university, so he's constantly going to writing the essay too late.
Tell him not now. We're
Oh,
on
no, not anymore. We're up to speed.
I will tell him.
Yes, thank you. And you can see like that digital My Writing portfolio is key to that, the whole English experience at the high school. We're capturing their writing early and often. The department works so hard on that. I'd be remiss not to include that. That journey began a few years ago, and just to see the students' growth over time in each of their areas and to be able to use it if they want to for college admission is very, very exciting. In math, again, 4 credits to graduate, 2019 to 2022 graduates. We offer 23 courses around the areas of algebra, geometry, calculus. Very excited that we offer calculus A, B, and BC, statistics, and practical math. There is an increase in the line. Mr. Shagru can speak to his specific lines individually, but I just want to bring your attention that there was some replacement text needed for a specific course. He'll get in more detail there, but there is an increase necessary there. And we are focusing on small group instruction, flexible grouping within math courses, and our department chairs, there's 1 in English, 1 in math, are working really hard to support the curriculum implementation at the high school and work with professional learning as well. In science, much of the same. We're aligning to the NGSS standards. The majority of our core science teachers in the areas of earth science, biology, and some chemistry have received the NGSX training, which is the highest level of training you can have in science nationally. We support them by sending them to that training, but then bringing in the Science Center, Connecticut Science Center, to support them with the writing of assessments, which tends to be the trickiest part at each level. Once you have a unit of study, how do you assess it? You may recall that it is the first year that our science score is counted. Our students took an assessment in grades 5, 8, and 11 2 years ago as a pilot. Last year we received our results and our scores were not bad for the first time out. We're looking to get better over time as we understand as a district what these standards are all about and what they look like as we implement our units of study. So the high school's no exception. They've been at it a little longer than the rest of us, but they have a nice mix of integration of course content and individualized course content, meaning you could take an integrated science course, you could take a biology course, you could take a chemistry course. You have a lot of choices, whereas at the middle school we do integrated coursework in science so that there's no gap in student learning, and that all content areas are fresh before they embark on their high school journey and decide what they really want to focus on. The key is by 2023, kids are going to have a lot of choice in the graduation requirements, and so we want them to have experiences earlier in order to make decisions for themselves and to be able to change their decisions over time. Social studies, 3 credits are necessary to graduate, 1 credit in U.S. history and 0.5 in civics. Just as a reminder, we offer 24 courses from sociology, microeconomics, AP government, modern America. They're all aligned to the Connecticut social studies framework if they've been written to the new, new-ish Connecticut social studies standards. We're still catching up. A lot of curriculum are written. I think I counted today, I think we've written about 200 curriculum in the last 4 years, and there's a lot more to do. We're on that 5-year cycle, and we're constantly reviewing. But again, I can't say enough about specifically the high school staff who has written the most amount of curriculum, who has been super supportive in helping me to vet the curriculum and to support it in implementation with their colleagues at the high school. Really amazing, amazing. So I'm really passionate about this, as you can tell. Love the fact that we have a lot of variety out of our high school, and we're always building year over year from elementary to middle school and high school in primary source documents, argumentation, and most importantly, seeing history through multiple viewpoints and not just the viewpoint of one individual person or culture. So we're working really hard on that. Yes, Mr. Fitt.
When am I getting my textbook back?
Funny, we thought you kept it, and then I found out you didn't. So yeah, if you'd like to borrow it again, you may. I went looking for it today.
It's going to take me a while to read through it. And I missed the night that we approved it, and I don't know why. So I'll bring it up now and keep it short.
Yes.
I did have the opportunity to read a couple chapters of it, but it's a lot of reading.
Yes, it is.
Maybe it has changed over time. I will just, my personal perspective, the visual, there's a lot of noise on the page. There's a lot going on the pages in those books, and there's a lot of little tasks for the students to do. Maybe because where I am at this advanced age, I just want to see information. Maybe it's more visual learning now than I was a little surprised at that. The other thought I had, as I was flipping through that book, and that's the publisher, those pages are so thin. I think I was turning a page, and I might have put a nick in it. I'm like, I'm buying this book. I can see it now. That concerns me with repetitive use by students. And if I think we're going to see a problem, we're going to have to be ordering a lot of these books. The other thought I had, I don't know if you saw the New York Times article on history books last week.
I did not miss that one. I was prepped
That's
for
the
budget.
one miss.
We're prepped for this.
I'm shocked.
It's worth reading. We'll
not
talk about it
presented.
another time. But there's a lot of information. There's a lot of new information. I am truly of another generation. And so what we saw in social studies in the books back in those days, we still had inkwells on some of the desks. And it is much different today, much more diverse.
He used an inkwell.
And he did say that.
Fountain pens and all that good stuff.
And remember,
There was in my elementary school.
remember, it's really a resource, so we're not going page by page, we're not going chapter by chapter, we're really using we write curriculum first, and then we align the resource to it. A long time ago, it was you bought a textbook, and then you align the curriculum to it, and we moved far away from that. The social studies department head teacher has been instrumental in looking for primary source documents that represent multiple viewpoints, and we're going to pull from that textbook for a reason, because there's video accounts, there's scenes that are reenacted for kids to try to get a visual on. It's that you're talking about multimodalities. Kids learn in different ways. Some kids learn visually by watching something. Some kids learn by listening to it and watching it. So that's why that textbook is a useful resource for us, not because we're going chapter by chapter.
So we're using it as an adjunct to the learning process or the classroom process?
Correct.
I mean, those pages, I don't know, my personal, are very busy. There's a lot going on one page, and that's why I only got through a couple chapters. I tried to read the whole thing.
Welcome to a high schooler's brain.
Yeah,
They're used
that's
to
what
all
I was
that
gonna
social
say.
media.
They're
and-
wired differently.
Stimulation.
Yeah, it's a
They're
totally
wired
different.
differently. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they're different. They are different.
But yes, I will get it back.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought up the textbook, because there is an increase in the social studies line for 240 textbooks at $87 each, of which you approved, so you'll see that in the lines as Mr. Shagru goes through it.
Check that question.
Joe, they go online for the textbooks anyway.
Yeah,
The textbooks
they
just
do.
sit on the shelf.
We didn't buy into the software, did we?
No, we did not get the online component, because when the students were surveyed, they wanted the physical text. They want the book.
They say
Yes,
that
they want to give their eyes a break from the
for that.
device,
I believe
and they want to copy it, highlight it.
Smell it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're still, if there comes a time where we would like to go, kids would like to go through the digital version, it's definitely something we could acquire.
Right.
But right now, that isn't the
That does
general,
not surprise me about
not the
it.
general consensus. We survey them about so many things. This was loud and clear.
I bet
Yes.
that's not surprising.
They say that until they've got to lug that thing around, because those books are
It's very thick.
gigantic.
It's very thick. Okay, world
World
language. World language. We offer French, German, and Spanish at the high school, 8 courses in each. Last year, Mr. Shagru, myself, and Jessica Ward, who is the department chair, were really excited to offer the Seal of Biliteracy to our students upon graduation. Again, we began offering it in 2019. We had 1 French student earn the seal, 5 students in the German passed the test for German and earned the Seal of Biliteracy, and 20 Spanish speakers earned the Seal of Biliteracy. You can also earn it for English if you are a native speaker of any other language and take one of the assessments that you'll see. There is an increase in our assessment line here. We need to purchase additional assessments to test for Seal of Biliteracy. It's not a large expense. I think it's about $500. That is to make sure that we're offering the opportunity for students who speak a second language that is not English to take the assessment and see if they can earn the Seal of Biliteracy for their diploma. It shows colleges, obviously, that they are proficient in multiple languages, and they have to receive a certain score on the assessment in order to qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy. That was something the state offered up to districts several years ago, and many of us took them up on that.
So I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
And this is, just, has there ever been any thought of starting world languages prior to middle school? Because in elementary?
Some districts offer it.
Yeah.
It's just hard to find the staffing.
It's the staffing.
Certification is really difficult.
That was Bethel with Brookfield, wasn't it, that tried it?
And they couldn't get it.
Oh, okay.
That conversation has been around.
It's hard to find those
It is.
secondary.
Right, well, and if we're bilingual, the ones we are forced to have.
Yes.
Finding those.
Yes, oh yes, that's very difficult.
And the magnet school starts at what, 2nd grade?
No, kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Is it kindergarten?
Yeah.
Yes, kindergarten.
Okay, music. We have a regionally recognized music program, and within that program, we offer 10 courses. We also, within those courses are band, orchestra, the same you've heard, wind ensemble, chorus, advanced chorus, music appreciation and theory. If you're interested in music, we have a course for you. Our curriculum is based on the national and Connecticut core standards, and there is an increase in the line for the music department because they need some equipment replaced, music and music chairs and stands. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm remiss, I almost missed visual arts, and that was not on purpose. For fine arts or visual arts, we offer 14 courses in studio art, graphic design, ceramics, and art history. Again, our curriculum is connected, K-12, to the national and state art standards. And we are working very hard to offer opportunities for teachers at the middle school to talk to teachers at the high school about their work, specifically on professional learning days. If there ever comes a time where we can institute release time, at least a half day once a quarter, it would be instrumental in getting these individuals together more frequently to talk about vertical alignment of curriculum. Right now, we don't have any opportunity like that unless it's on a large district PD day, which this year happened one time.
Am I remembering correctly that we offered a photography course?
Digital photography, yes, just didn't put it on my list, but we surveyed students 2 years ago, it was very high interest, offered the course. Mr. Shagru was filling it up within seconds, and had tried to offer more sections, or tried to get students in it the following year. Still very popular.
Yep. Some things never change. Some of us popular.
And they're using their cell phone cameras,
Oh,
which,
yeah.
because they're so good.
Yeah.
All right, health, just a reminder that Health 1 currently is required for graduation for the graduating classes of 19 through 22. We offer 8 courses. We have pre-professional programs within health as well as vocational. And what's really exciting is that the state looks at what we offer specifically in these areas that we're about to embark on. Health, Project Lead the Way, business, tech ed, all of what's coming up next outside of Project Lead the Way fall under Perkins. And we're excited to offer things like allied health, EMT, certifications that kids can get while they're in our high school or test for immediately following high school and start working. We have sports medicine, and we also offer early childhood courses and child development courses. As you may recall, we're looking to offer, I'm still working with the Workforce Investment Board and Linda Skorlik, who is the assistant principal at the high school, to offer pharmacy tech to our students. And we're in talks, we have all the regional CVS areas outlined, been working with Kathy Awad from Workforce Investment Board. Students have to be 18 in order to work in the pharmacy, but we can give them the online course that CVS offers and allow them to see if this is an area of interest for them. Another skill-based career that could end up being something much bigger, even if you don't want to go into pharmacy, or even if you do, you could pursue it at a later time. Physical education. We have 4 courses offered in phys ed. One of those courses is called a PE leader course. Students have to apply and they can shadow the teacher and really learn what it's like to run warm-up sessions and be a part of the physical education teacher's world for a short time to see if that's what they want to do or aspire to be. All of our curriculum, I'm excited to say, K-12 is updated in physical education. The team came together, wrote it a few years ago and did a really nice job. So it's aligned from K to 12 vertically. We look at the physical fitness assessment over time, so we have to administer it in certain grades at certain times of the year, mostly in the winter or spring. We can do it at any time now, whereas before we had to administer it in the spring. What we really like about our new curriculum is that we're testing kids periodically along the way to see if they're getting stronger over time and marking it with the hopes of seeing a better rate of health for our kids overall. It's not about the score, it's about their physical endurance and their health over time and getting them to want to participate in a lifetime activity and learn about the difference between a lifetime activity, a recreational sport, and a team sport. They actually go through, they get to choose, there's a lot of choice at the high school phys ed in their curriculum, so they have to experience a lifetime activity like an aerobics class or a spin class, a recreational activity, and a team sport. And then hopefully they'll want to take this further when they're not in phys ed anymore, and join a gym or take a class because they took interest in it at the high school. We even offer cycling thanks to a generous donation from a local agency. Okay, Project Lead the Way. They're a part of our science department. We talked about how those courses are offered in grades 7 and 8. We have 5 courses offered at the high school. They're all project-based, and students can apply for college credit to multiple colleges, specifically University of New Haven, if they meet the criteria for course grade and the number of courses they've taken. So kids can experience digital electronics, civil engineering and architecture, and again, if kids had more experience with Project Lead the Way units at the middle school, we think that we'd have a higher number of kids entering into Project Lead the Way at the high school, so we're going to look into that and work on it moving forward. Yes.
Interject here. you know, I think we've talked about those classes as being the engineering classes. And so I think students think, well, I'm not gonna be an engineer, so I'm not gonna take Project Lead the Way. So I think we kind of need to shift how we talk about those classes, because I think that's why we don't have a lot of students take them. Well, I'm not gonna be an engineer, I'm not smart enough to be you know, but I think if they got in them, they would find value in them, even if they decide not to go into, you know, something like that. But I think kind of how we talk about them really kind of dictates the kids that go and choose those classes.
I agree. And I love that Project Lead the Way offers robotics. Courses in robotics, we've sent teachers to be trained and they're running the club. So I think as we diversify what Project Lead the Way can do and what it is, I think we can onboard more kids. So I love that suggestion. And as we talk about course selection, we'll make sure that we are cognizant of that language that we're using with kids.
How is the space there now? I know when it first started, there could only be X amount of kids because there was only space for X amount of kids. Is the space at the high school? Right.
Got 2 rooms, the 2 classrooms are pretty large.
Yeah. Okay. Our business department has 17 courses that they offer overall, and just like health, we have pre-professional programs and vocational programs that are offered. We're very fortunate to have Perkins funding that allows us the opportunity to put students on buses and take them to actually see some of these careers in action and be a part of witnessing and asking questions about what goes on day to day in the environments of like finance or website design and accounting. I sign off on these experiences at this time of year, almost monthly, at least 2 or 3 in each of these areas. So it's exciting to see. We also have our competitive clubs, FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, and DECA, our DECA club, and we have our robotics club. So those clubs go out and compete, and many of the students are a part of the business courses. Computer science is also in there, and I'll remind you that I'm looking to add Future Bankers of America that we talked about too with the Workforce Investment Board. That is a curriculum that is utilized by banks, Danbury Savings Bank, Thomaston Savings Bank specifically. Their employees actually get training on the same curriculum that our kids would get, and it would allow them to decide if they wanted to take a role maybe as a teller or work in the bank in some capacity. So again, it would allow them to leave high school with a skill-based career and maybe get on track for future learning in that area. And we are working on building up, as I said, all of our internship experiences and our externship experiences. I won't reiterate what I said earlier about the wonderful relationship I've started with, and Dr. Parker has started as well, with the Economic Development Commission head. She was so receptive to everything we talked about, and she is willing to hit the ground running and talk to businesses who've already been speaking with her and speaking with us and working on the common language together to onboard. So I'm excited for what the future holds, not only in business, but across all of the pathways we already offer, and as we look to expand them, where that might go. In technology education, that really, in tech ed in high school, the definition is very different than what it is at the middle school. I look at it as more of like automation within like architectural drafting and woodworking and AutoCAD. It goes more into hands-on than it is when we think computers at the middle school, or tech ed at the middle school. Tech ed at the high school falls under Perkins, so they're going out and they're experiencing different field trips and work-related activities, both at colleges who offer them and on-site different woodworking places and AutoCAD and anyone who's doing architectural drafting. So the kids actually get a real-life experience outside of the classroom. As a reminder, we're working really hard at working with both the bus company as well as the Workforce Investment Board to bring in advanced manufacturing in partnership with MedInstill. I know many board members wanted to tour the facility. We'll work on setting up a time. I just wanted to kind of get you through the budget process. The Workforce Investment Board is working on getting the curriculum from an outside agency because it had to be written due to changes in the safety laws. She has not received that curriculum yet, but we want to be prepared because as soon as she is in receipt of it, we'd like to make sure that we can get in front of students, market it, and then start the process. We're in conversations with the bus company about actually physically getting to MedInstill. The road there is narrow, and we're looking for a way to get all the students who would be interested in going. I think we're looking at about 8 to 10 who may be very interested in doing this over time to get them over to MedInstill to take part in it. And MedInstill is very eager to have us. So,
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
The architectural design, the tech ed courses, are they geared more towards those students looking to go straight to career? Or is there really a branch over between them wanting to go on, pursue them in college?
So when I looked, I recently reviewed the woodworking class and Projects Unlimited curriculum, and it is a very hands-on curriculum. The students actually create projects in Projects Unlimited. It builds on woodworking, so they are getting skills in order to be able to decide if they want to pursue it, and they could build certain things, and they'll learn how to use the planer and many of the machines that are used in carpentry. But I wouldn't say they're going to be ready to actually go out and physically work alongside a carpenter in the capacity of even an
And that's
apprenticeship.
why these internships are so important, because the hands-on experience, and I'm so glad that we are partnering with the town and the economic development director, because there's so many successful business owners in this town who I'm sure would love to take on an apprentice, so to speak, to teach them, you know, because obviously you're not going to get a job if you haven't applied those skills. But the main question, one of the questions I had is about the architectural design. For some reason, to me, doesn't seem to fit into that category, because I would think there's such a crossover with art, with that particular course, because there's a lot of drawing involved with planning.
There's a lot of drafting, but it's a lot of building plans.
Okay.
So it has some art to it, but there's a lot of math, a lot. It's math heavy and it's planning heavy. This is something that always fell under, I'm going to date myself, but industrial arts when I was in school. This was always a part of that. It was always drafting and woodworking, just to give you exposure
And I'm sure,
to understanding
I
how
know a lot
to
of this
apply.
is done on the computer now, but
AutoCAD.
whereas so is art. You know, our art is
Yes.
also being done a lot more on
Yes.
computers,
Yes.
and so it just, I don't know, it just seemed to me to be, wow, this could fit into this category, or it could fit into this category, and I just wondered.
And that's why guidance is so key, because when they meet with department chairs and talk about options for kids, if they understand what AutoCAD is all about and a student has an interest in art, they can say, would this be something you're interested in? Let's take a look at the curriculum together to bridge that for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, EL and bilingual. As you know, we qualify to have a bilingual teacher at the high school. We were unable to find one, because when you get to the high school level, unfortunately, you have to find a bilingual teacher that is certified subject-specific along with bilingual. It's almost like trying to find a unicorn. It's very, very hard. So we did post for the position. We did not successfully fill the position. But we were able to find a TESOL teacher, and that works for us for this year. Next year, we'll post again for a bilingual teacher at the high school, because we're still maintaining the 20 Spanish speakers we have. And we will try again to see if we could find a bilingual teacher. In the event that we can't, I work very closely with Ms. Baldelli's office. We send a nice formalized letter to the commissioner asking him if we can use a TESOL teacher in lieu of a bilingual teacher. And then once we have their approval, we can move forward with utilizing the TESOL teacher. Right now, the TESOL teacher has been a big support to our students at the high school. Right now, but prior to her arrival, we had one teacher who is this year 0.49 EL coordinator, 0.5 teacher at the high school. The TESOL teacher has picked up additional students because she is a 1.0, and so she's been able to push into classes on top of supporting the English courses where our EL students, our bilingual students are assigned. So we have, and they've been doing homework club. There's just been so many things they've been able to do for students. I can't say enough about how much this coordinator has really, even at a 0.49, has made such an impact on the lives of so many kids across district and our EL and bilingual staff. It's just been amazing. Today, the state of Connecticut reached out to me in every district across our state to see if we had any students who have come into Connecticut from the earthquakes in Puerto Rico who were displaced. I'm consistently working directly with the business office, Donna Urban, who does all of our reporting, runs the numbers for me to see if we've had any recent enrollments, and we haven't had any in New Milford yet, but it's something I keep a close eye on and speak to the secretarial staff about, because we have an obligation to support any student who is coming in being displaced without any paperwork and exercising the correct enrollment procedures. So I will be reaching out to each school, making sure that we're keeping an accurate count and that they're reporting directly to my office too, in case we do have any students. Last year, districts were able to receive funding for students who were displaced because of the earthquake that weren't expected, so they weren't a part of maybe your per pupil expenditure. We didn't have any when we had to report a few years ago when Puerto Rico also had the hurricane. But we keep a close eye on it, and I would report to the state if they were to offer any per pupil support if we did have students. But no matter what, we'll do our best to accommodate them and meet their social emotional learning needs, because the transition for them can't be easy to us.
And I feel every time I finish through, there's not much change.
She's stealing your thunder.
I don't mean to. But it's okay, we work very well together. We have one reduction in the mathematics department right now that we're proposing for you to consider for next year, and everything else is status quo on the staff. And again, the ranges are there because Mr. Sugar sends us what he has for students enrolled, and then we can't do projections quite yet because they're just into that process.
So can I ask the mathematics teacher, the reasoning behind the reduction?
Mr. Sugar, that's with the math teacher reduction.
It's course sizes. I mean, I think that's what we've used the data to make the decisions with, along with, both Alicia and the superintendent.
I know we're struggling in math right now with staffing, so.
I think that.
Currently, we have 3 openings in math, and this would reduce one. We'd have 2 openings in math.
We're anticipating this thing, a retirement, so we'll be able to absorb, hoping to be able to absorb those classes in
Right.
with the other
It's a
teachers. That's why we're taking a look at that and the numbers that Mr. Sugar is talking
So
about.
students aren't taking as much math, or you're anticipating because they're taking, some students will not get credit at the junior high, you won't be seeing?
No, I don't think that's it. I think we were trying to absorb one, and this was based on a retirement number.
So we're not down, I guess we're not down that many students that I would see an impact. So are we just gonna put?
More students in more classes. The class sizes will go up.
I think, Mr. Sugar, do you want to talk a little about the particular position and the rationale of what we were talking about, that it is the SAT position?
Well, SAT prep, I mean, we offer a host of electives throughout all disciplines. One of which we would eliminate would be the SAT prep, and I think Dr. Parker and I, we've discussed kind of an alternative to allow SAT prep to take place in the afternoon for kind of a stipend type of position that would save the district money and just reallocate funds where we're not paying, a full teacher's salary to teach an SAT prep course when that teacher can teach other courses, and then we can have the SAT prep offered to our students after school.
And they take it quarterly, right, so that we could have the students in a more significant class,
Right.
and then utilize those students who really want
Right.
to take the prep when we can
Correct.
schedule them, whether it be a 0 hour or if they're involved in athletics or band, just making sure that we can offer it to students who need it without having a teacher all day just teaching SAT prep.
Correct.
We've had SAT prep for years, correct?
Quite a few years, yeah. I don't know how many years, but it's 3, 4, 5 years.
And if I remember in other conversations we've had when it comes to this topic, we have seen an uptick in SAT scores as a result of us providing this prep course. And not now are we, one, we're not going to provide it as often. 2, is SAT falling off the qualifications for many
Right.
schools? And/or are we just turning around pushing students out private SATs, where now our parents, particularly in seniors who spend so much of their own personal money for so many activities, now going to have to pick up an SAT course for, I don't know, $500 or $600?
Right, well, a couple things. First, I don't necessarily agree with your statement that we've seen an uptick in the data in the SATs.
That's the understanding I have from here.
Well, that's...
But if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Yeah, I am. That's incorrect. I don't think we've seen a drastic bang for our buck with our SAT numbers. I mean, we are middle of the road. That's where we are with SAT, both in the language arts and in the math. So as far as that goes, we haven't seen a huge uptick. What we're talking about is providing other opportunities in other times to use our resources a little bit more efficiently during the day, as opposed to paying one FTE for SAT prep, and that's all that teacher teaches, when we can do this a little bit more economical after school and with no cost to the students as well.
But we're a middle-of-the-road school in math, so our answer is to take down one more math teacher. And the other thing is, how many of our students are going to take our after-school SAT prep, and we're now, again, looking at putting seniors and juniors and seniors in a position they're going to have to pay for private classes. And one of the things I've seen in high schoolers...
Joe, why are you making that leap that they're going to have to, I just said we're going to offer...
Where are they going to learn? We're going to hold enough classes after school to provide the SAT.
Sure, we could do that.
Let's see where we stay on next year. I think we're looking to push kids to spend money and their families spend it personally outside of classes.
Joe, if I may.
That's how we're trying to make up this difference.
If I may,
Okay.
right now, students can link, SAT School Day affords students the opportunity to link to Khan Academy. Khan Academy is a virtual environment where kids can go in, they can link their PSAT scores, and we administer PSAT starting in grade 9. They can link their PSAT data to Khan Academy, and it gives them specialized instruction to build them up in areas of weakness that need to be developed over time before they get to SAT. More time spent in Khan Academy equates to higher test scores on SAT, according to Khan Academy. They've done linking studies, and they've been looking at this now for several years. Well, I get linking percentage data directly from Alan Bernstein for SAT from College Board. He sends it directly to us. I send it to Mr. Schaghticoke. We've, in the past, worked directly with the department chairs to make sure that each teacher provides the opportunity for students to link into Khan Academy during the day. So every student should have access to utilize Khan Academy, which is completely free for SAT prep. That is actually a very efficient way, tailored directly to your specific needs, to get what you need to perform the way you want to perform. And you have multiple opportunities to take PSAT here with us, grade 9, 10, and 11, SAT School Day, your 11th grade year, and then you can take the SAT again on your own, specifically if you need the writing component that's not offered during SAT School Day in Connecticut, to see if you can up the ante on your score if that's what you choose to do in either literacy or math. And you can combine scores. So your best scores are what you can send to colleges through Naviance. So it wouldn't be a one or the other. I understand your concern. But it would afford kids the opportunity who still want to take the in-person class because they like that in-person interaction, just during a different time, not during the school day.
I'd love to see us track this now from here forward, where we're dropping this class and where we go on SAT scores. I have 2 more years here, and I'd like to see where we stand in the next 2 years on this. Okay.
Have you seen, Mr. Schaghticoke, a drop in enrollment in those classes? Because I know having a senior, my daughter opted not to take it and to do Khan Academy.
Right.
And she did very well in the SAT. But she wanted to take other classes.
Right.
And so if she took that class, then she couldn't.
Right.
So, I think a lot of kids also choose not to take it.
Right, we traditionally try to schedule all our juniors into that course, but again, if a student opts out for other reasons with parent consent, then obviously we'll allow them to do that.
Right.
I guess my other question to you is, I'm always wanting to offer more stuff. If we retained that position, not necessarily in math, but if we retained that position, are there other electives we could offer? Do you have, the space, and do we have the curriculum, or could we implement that quickly?
Well, I think therein lies the problem, because I don't think we have the curriculum, and we have a course proposal process that we follow. So I don't think, we don't have anything canned and ready to go
But
at the ready.
once you lose it, you're not getting back.
Right.
The other avenue that Mr. Schaghticoke and I looked into, we've been talking about it for a few years, is that early college experience with Uconn. Specifically after we began losing math teachers in the middle of the year and then having to, Mr. Schaghticoke working really hard with his team to try to find another path forward. When we met with a representative from Uconn, it's very different than what it was in the past, but the same thing remains true. You have to have a teacher committed to going to the training at Uconn. The in order to teach the course. You use Uconn's curriculum. In the past, you had to use their textbook and buy into the textbook they were using. That's changed. They will now allow you the opportunity in almost all courses to use the textbook you currently have and align it to what they're asking kids to know and be able to do.
Okay,
What's-
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I totally spaced what you said at the beginning. It's the, something
Er-
with UConn?
Early college experience?
Okay, so they take a class here and receive college credit from UConn.
That is correct.
Yes. Yes.
Could we not do something like that with somebody from WestConn because they're closer?
The courses are taken in our building, so they don't have to
They don't
travel.
Right, I
travel.
understand that, but I mean, if we were gonna have a partnership, it seems more logical to me that we would have a partnership with
Does
the
WestConn have
university
that?
that's literally 10,
I
15
don't
minutes down
know
the road.
for certain.
But the transcript applies anywhere.
It does, yeah.
So if you decide, so if you take an ECE course through UConn, they're the flagship university in the state. So if you take a course, take Spanish, for example. If you take a Spanish ECE course, all right, and you graduate from New Milford High School and enroll in, East Carolina University, those 3 credits from that Spanish course will transfer there.
I'm not certain that WestConn does the same thing.
We used to do
UConn's
this a
been-
lot with Naugatuck Valley.
Yes,
Right,
and then
We did.
And they-
they can no longer do it
They
anymore
changed
after
their
they went through
standards relative to
accreditation.
their
That's
NEASC
actually
accreditation.
Correct.
that was our
We had
launching point.
We had
Yes.
quite
Not
an
now.
articulated agreement with them for many subjects, but we no longer can do that.
And what
I-
I'm sorry.
Would just like to say that I could find a use for that one teacher because we have a real need at New Milford High School and at Schaghticoke to have someone working with us with these internships for kids. These teachers teach a full load and then they're trying to go out and do what they're supposed to do, and we could certainly utilize that to be a profile of the graduate person somebody's got to go out and talk to everybody to get these things organized, to do what they're supposed to do. We could certainly have a pathway type of teacher who's focused on what are the pathways, what is the support, what is the help.
Be the community liaison.
Absolutely. I mean, we could utilize that.
And do the recruiting in the school.
Because the assistant principal cannot do it. She's doing the best she can. I'm not saying she can't do it, but she's doing the Perkins grant. She's doing this, she's doing that. This person could take a lot of the lead. It's almost like we would have a certified teacher who is working with us to make sure.
But would it have to be a certified teacher?
Well, no, but it has to be somebody, if they're gonna be working with kids, who understands education is all I'm saying. It's not an administrative position, but I certainly could fill that spot, Ms. Chastain.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. Can we do this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm actually going to be brief because I know questions we're heading into questions, and on Tuesday I'm going to get into depth on a number of different programs. I think the biggest change for our high schoolers and students with disabilities is that we really look more at that self-determination piece and really making them more accountable, more independent, more autonomous as they move through the years. In fact, the IEP for high schooler has transition goals in it. So not only are we obligated through our programming, we're also obligated through measurable goals and objectives to make sure that they have what they need in terms of transition. Again, the same types of threads, the multisensory reading, although our numbers continue to be quite reduced. I think there's 17 students at the high school right now that are having literacy. How it's a program that we're using up there. It's online. And again, the hope is that, that gap continues to close. These kids that are truly in that type of a program for multisensory reading or English are typically dyslexic, and they need that continued intervention and services through high school. Behavior intervention program, we have 2 full-time programs at the high school. Again, they're serviced by our psychologists, our social workers, our behaviorists. So it really is a collaborative team approach to help the students in those programs. They do use Odysseyware. They also do some direct instruction, so it's a combination of what the child needs. Co-taught classrooms give Mr. Shagru a lot of credit. There are 32 classes at the high school that are co-taught. That's some heavy lifting. It's not just in literacy, it's not just in math, it's also in science and social studies. So there's a lot of collaboration at the high school in terms of meeting the needs for students with disabilities. There are 2 ILC classrooms currently, again, dependent on the needs and the population of the students. They do a lot of activities of daily living, they do life skills, they also are included in general ed classes, and they're 2 days a week, I believe, a number of them go out into the community for job-related skills and life skills. Speech and language is integrated into all of the services per IEP mandates for the students. Psychologists, social workers, and I'd be remiss to not mention that they are part of our crisis team in all of the buildings, and that's a really important piece because they're called upon frequently to help the needs of the students. Typically, it's a non-teaching position, so that at the beck and call of someone who is in crisis, a student, they can get there. And they work collaboratively. We also do have a regional crisis team, and I don't know how many of you know about that, but we were just called upon this past weekend to Danbury because there was an incident, and so our social worker offered to go there. And again, it derived from Sandy Hook because we needed our community, and so our community continues to evolve and to support each other, which is a real good sign. Our substance abuse counselor, again, I talked about it briefly. The other piece I think is real important is that they do risk assessments. So even if a student might not be actively engaged in substance, they'll assess the level of need and whether or not there needs to be intervention, whether or not there needs to be outsourcing, hospitalization, outside therapy, whatever it might be. So again, they work in collaboration with Schaghticoke, but the majority of the time is at the high school.
I just have a quick question on that. Do we have any statistics on the substance abuse also on, how many individuals that they've seen? I'd like to get that information to the board eventually, some of that. We have support services in place, and we're very proud of that. We try very hard to hold on to that, and I think by seeing those statistics of exactly what our staff is doing and how many, I think is helpful. I would personally like to see it.
And I think too, it's the substance abuse counselor, but it's also the number of crisis interventions. How many, they have planned, scheduled counseling sessions, but then they are also called upon for crisis. And we've talked about this already as an administrative team, the number of calls that our administrators get, during the day is high. And it's not going away.
Get that report sooner rather than later. It's on its way.
Special education department chair, inclusion teacher, again, that is one full-time position, servicing all the students and working under the direction of the special ed supervisor. And that is a position that was actually moved from Sarah Noble last year to the high school. Paraeducators, again, are threaded throughout all of our services. Contracted services, OTPT. Again, our ESS program, which I'll dive into a little bit more on Tuesday, is there. We have 18 slots for students. A number of them are not special ed. A number of them have 504s or general ed students who happen to be in crisis and need that level of intervention. Again, it's a cost avoidant program. Originally it was reducing ODP costs out of district costs, but now it's cost avoidant.
How many slots of the evening are filled?
At the high school, how many are filled right now? I want to say there are 14 or 15.
Okay,
And
14?
we have an intake supposed to be happening tomorrow.
So 14, 15.
Yes.
That's great.
It's a process that we go through too. It's not, you have to meet criteria. It has to be effective for the child. And then our BCBA, again, a contracted service, and our student care workers who are contracted services. And these are our numbers right now, our demographics. And if you look closely, the high school right now is projected to increase in numbers. And so that might look startling to you. There are, I haven't done the math, but there are a number of students who are 28, I think, that are actually increasing at the high school. It's projected, but what I do want to point out is the high school has more special ed teachers than any other building. So you might look at that number, but then it's spread out amongst 14 teachers, so it might be only 1 or 2 additional students. This has happened in the past at the high school. I monitor it closely. In fact, 4 years ago, we had 200 students with IEPs and the same number of staff. So.
Okay, on the staffing, and Mrs. Olson just mentioned that we had 14 special ed teachers at the high school. You see the chart shows you 15.6. And that's because of what we have at central office in the computer-based instruction program. So that's the difference of a 1.6 there. And then the rest, there's no change.
Oh, thank you. And I'll talk more about the computer-based instruction program when we get to DOI for my budget. Interventionist, same level of support at the high school that students receive at elementary and middle as well. At the high school, there's a part-time reading interventionist and one part-time math interventionist. As of last year, the reading interventionist that was part-time was trained on how to administer a running record by the coach at Schaghticoke. So now there's continuity on how to read and understand where a student is reading in order to be able to give varied levels of support with the textbooks that kids might not have been able to access previously. So we're excited about that work. Department chairs, there is a department chair that oversees each of the academic areas, and then a few of the other areas that you saw, fine arts, music, are generally combined. And the department chair's role really is, they have a few periods off, I believe 2 each, they have a lessened course load, and they have 2 periods where they can take a look at where teachers are in pacing, talk to them about any instructional snafus they might be hitting and work through with them, conduct professional learning, and really try to meet the needs of the teachers in their department, because at the high school, they're teaching various courses, so it's not that they're all teaching the same content at the same time. So the department chairs are very busy regardless of what department they're in, but that is the core work that they do. They also attend district-level meetings with myself and the administrative team for both professional learning and curriculum development. So they're a part of those processes in the hope that they'll see vertical alignment in literacy and math as we discuss them in the district meetings, and then be able to bring them back to the high school, to the staff in each department there. Library media, more of the same, brand new curriculum, part of the K-12 continuum. The library media specialist there is actually new to library media this year. It's her first time as a library media specialist at the high school. She's made some wonderful enhancements to what was done previously, and it was already wonderful. She's utilizing the curriculum and meeting with students in small group to support their needs in the library media center. And she's made some requests recently for technology that are really exciting that we're seeing coming our way. Both Mr. Rush and I and the principals approve any technology that wasn't utilized previously, and we're seeing a lot coming out of the Library Media Center at the high school. So hopefully we'll be able to share some of that with the Schaghticoke Library Media Specialist once she gets it up and running, and allow them time to meet with one another. School counselors, again, their mission is the same at the high school. More intense on the college and career planning track, and making sure that students are meeting their graduation requirements and that they're on track to graduation. Having conversations with students about their options for credit recovery, where they lie, the costs associated with that. Because as you know, we don't have our own credit recovery program offered in the summer to students without pay. They either pay to go in an online environment, or they can pay to take courses at Brookfield if the courses that they need are offered. It is something that we thought to propose in the budget, but it didn't make the cut. Unfortunately, we do think it would be a wonderful asset for students at our high school to have, and it would keep more kids at our high school and on track. I do see, because I oversee adult ed, the students who are very close, but just want a different environment, and maybe because of their age or the number of credits that they have, transitioning over to adult education. So I do see a need. Would love to see it soon, but within the next few years, it would be wonderful if we could offer something for our kids here without having them pay for it outside.
Do you have a cost associated with that initiative?
Yes, so we looked into seeing how we would do it for both general and special education students. I believe the cost was $24,000. It would have been an Odyssey Wear.
For both?
For both,
I just
yes.
wanna be
it
clear,
combined,
okay.
Yes. We looked into the Odyssey Wear licenses and received a quote, the number of staff we would need to be teachers of record, what that would look like. I worked very closely with Mr. Shabru and Ms. Olson to create what it could look like if it were to move forward.
How many students do you think that 25,000 would cover?
Quite a few. I could look it up. I have it.
I'm sure you
in
do.
the vault.
I don't need it tonight, but I'm just
I
curious.
can get it to you. We actually looked at the historicals about how
I'm
many
sure
kids went
that's what
and
you
how
did,
many
yeah.
would benefit. And, just not having to double up with an English course or a math course when you were already struggling with it would be so beneficial to keeping them on track and afford them other opportunities in their junior and senior year that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And then administration, again, 1 high school principal, Mr. Shagru, 3 assistant principals, 1 part-time special education supervisor. The other .4 is at Schaghticoke of this individual, and 1 athletic director.
Can I ask a question about the department chairs?
Sure.
These are the 2.89 full-time equivalent, but how many individuals fill these positions?
Ms. Baldelli?
Yep, we have a department chair for each of the subject areas. So we have one for math, one for social studies.
And so they each get a point?
They get .4. So they teach 3 classes, and then they are released from the other 2 classes that are normal scheduled for teacher that teaches. So it's .4.
For how many again?
We've got a .49 in special ed, and then if we take and divide it by .4, is that 6?
Okay. And then you have a .49
The
for sped.
.49 is just a little bit more
Gotcha.
than the
Okay.
subject
That's good to
areas.
know. Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Keep ripping this thing down. Tearing the place apart. Mr. Shagru or Mr. Lipinski?
I'll just go through quickly this, and anything that gets into the nitty-gritty details, I'll obviously defer to Mr. Lipinski. We're a part of the Southwest Conference. There are 14 schools. We are the second largest school in our conference behind Newtown. We participate in the double L at the state level. We have 27 programs at our high school, so we are a comprehensive athletic program with sub-varsity teams as well. You can see how we're broken down by season. Again, to clarify, our season is basically our student athletes are starting in August, and our season, the last sport ends in November. Thanksgiving week is football. The winter season starts up basically right after that Monday after Thanksgiving and goes through into March if you're lucky enough to make some state tournaments. Believe it or not, we were just talking about this, Keith and I, today. Many of the seasons already are half done, and it seems like we just started, but we're half done with the winter season. And then spring, obviously, middle of March, pitchers and catchers, all the way to June, if you're lucky enough to make state tournaments. You can see our student athlete participation by season. Again, as Dr. Longo said, the spring participation is based on last year's numbers. So we have 24 paid coaches in the fall, 21 in the winter, and 16 in the spring.
Are those athletes unique? Are those unique number of athletes, or are there some overlap from?
So those numbers are just total kids, so there are some overlap. Last year's numbers, we had a total of 575 unique athletes, and this year we're projecting to be around 630.
So and you think it'll be up from last year?
Yes. We're already up 35 in the first 2 seasons from last year to this year.
I'm sorry.
Do you, just one more question. So we did not have pay to play last year either, did we? Did we have pay to play?
No.
No.
Last year, yeah.
We
Yes,
did?
yes,
Yeah, I think we did we?
This is the year.
So do you, in your opinion?
Right, this is the first year.
Is the increased numbers because we don't have pay to play?
I think that's a factor for some families for sure. I think it's also this freshman class is a big freshman class where there's an increase in numbers. And
Okay.
also, I think our athletic council did a real nice job reaching out to 8th grade students and trying to get them excited about participating this year. And I think, all those played roles.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Mr. Lipinski, we've had this conversation before about crossover between sports from one season to the next, and this reflection in the district that some coaches of certain sports won't allow their students to play in another, and the easiest I can come up with is a football player wrestling or vice versa. Have we had the opportunity to address that with our team coaches to perhaps getting more participation by athletes, whether it be our track people playing football, vice versa, football players wrestling.
Right. First, I would say that we don't have coaches that are saying you have to play my sport and no other sports.
That's opposite what we hear in the community, but okay. We have
Yeah.
addressed it.
So we have a multi-sport philosophy at the high school where we're encouraging, as coaches, as administrators, that kids are participating in multiple activities, not specializing in one because of all the negative, connotations that can come with specializing, injury, boredom, burnout, not being fun anymore. So our coaches are encouraging kids to go out and play other sports.
I would have to say, I'm with Mr. Lipinski here, I've never heard that at the high school level.
It has been a problem.
It is.
I've had several families approach me specifically, and students, about this problem with coaches. So yes, I wouldn't bring it up if we haven't addressed it. And I've addressed it in the past with Mr. Shagru and Mr. Lipinski. So it is a concern in this community, but I'm glad to see we're addressing it.
I have heard that on many of the travel teams that parents put their kids on, that those coaches will say those things, but I've never heard that from a high school coach.
You learn something new every day. Thank you.
Here's the breakdown, some of the big ticket items relative to the athletic budget. You can see purchase services, 53540, $110,000. You can see how that's broken down accordingly with officials, event staff, reconditioning of equipment. Understand that, by national standards, and Coach Lipinski could speak to this a little bit more in depth, but our equipment needs to be certified and reconditioned on a regular basis.
On that issue, again, I've heard from the community and athletes that we've had a problem with our high school football team, the helmets. We're running into a lot of problems with them getting certified, and I see you put in $7,000 for 11 new helmets.
They have a lifespan, and we're reaching the expiration dates on sets of helmets and shoulder pads, so it's just that time where...
How many people do we field on the varsity team in a season? 60?
I'd say about 50 or so are on the sidelines during games.
So it would take us 5 to 6 years to replace.
Be a continual replacement.
Not if you're smart about it, because they run deals, companies run deals where you can purchase 8 and get 3 free, which we've had the opportunity to sign on, and then you can get an additional 4 for a discounted rate. So you can get 15 back for a very good price.
How about the shoulder pads? Are we running into a problem?
Same thing. They have a lifespan expiration as well.
Here's my question. Are we allocating enough money to replace these at a proper rate to keep our students, athletes safe?
We're not
particularly in the
there
heavy
yet.
contact sports.
Yeah.
This is based on quotes from the vendors that we've gone out and gotten for replacement shoulder pads and replacement helmets that are expiring.
Here. It's not a purchase service as well.
No, it's not out of this
It's
budget
in,
line,
but
it's
this
later
letter
in the
to,
presentation.
correct.
Yes.
And the other
It's
thing
in our
was
supply line.
uniforms. I don't know where that falls. Again.
I think
so-
they've got that little bit later in the presentation, so if you want to hang on just one
Yeah.
second.
Rentals, obviously 54420. We have ice hockey, boys and girls swimming, gymnastics, and golf that we pay a rental fee, and you can see how that is broken up, the $39,000, how that's allocated as well. This is our supplies, and I'll let Mr. Lipinski talk about this in more detail. And field trips first, 55,100. It's $102,000. Average cost of a bus trip's about $300. We average between 100 and 125 away events per season. I do have to say that I think Mr. Lipinski does a marvelous job of merging teams. So we're not just taking, one particular team down to, Weston. If we can get multiple teams on that bus, we do that to kind of conserve and use our resources wisely. And then $38,000 for, this is the supply line, and you can see how those monies are allocated as well.
Mr. Lipinski, and you're comfortable with these high contact sport replacement numbers there, football 7,000? You can work with that.
Yes, yep, based on the quote I got from the companies. That is gonna, that's a good cycle to be on, where I'm gonna be able to get 15 or so sets each year over the next few years.
You do like a rotation,
Right.
right, so it's like a
But-
constant.
but-
Yeah.
No, I was gonna answer your question relative to uniforms, that's this slide here, with that. Out of that $38,000, there isn't any money for uniforms, so let's just be clear about that.
There's not?
No.
No.
And that gets us balls, bats, helmets, that's it. That gets no I mean, understand where we're at here. I mean, we talked about this last year, and Mr. Lipinski can talk more detail. We are a double L school operating on half the budget that we should be having with respect to this line item. Last year, it was in the 70s, and we hacked it down to 38. So if you recall, so this line here, this slide here, you know, I think Mr. Lipinski does a marvelous job again of trying to rotate uniforms. So we haven't had a uniform purchase since this 2017, 2018 uniform.
And Mr. Lipinski did a great job with Mr. Shagru, and we came up with a plan for an additional $25,000. We could, 5 teams? Is it 7 teams? We could get uniforms for them with an additional
$9,000.
We get
$9,000 rebate. That was cut in the 11th hour when we had try to keep our 3.07 number. We had a conversation about, and we have the slide and we can show you on Tuesday night for what the plan is for that additional $25,000. I didn't have the $25,000. And they did a great job of pulling it from other places, reducing different lines in order to come up with that $25,000. And I just need to say I appreciate what you did, and we'd be happy to share it. It was a difficult.
Can I clarify that number? Is that a net number of 16,000? Is that what you alluded to when you're saying the 25,000?
No, the 25,000 we would buy. Do you want to explain how the rebate works?
Sure,
Okay.
so what we looked at was getting a
I'm just trying to get the budgetary
Right.
impact.
Yep, was get a male and female sport for each of the 3 seasons. So do male-female sport for fall, same thing for winter, same for spring, so that number 1, Title IX, we're being equitable. And then for an additional close to $5,000, we were able to get a 7th team fitted with full sets of home and aways, tops, bottoms, for a quote of $25,000 and an additional $9,000 we get back in rebates that we can put towards purchasing additional uniforms.
So for $25,000, you get $34,000 of buying power.
That's it. It's a $25,000 hit to the budget.
Yes.
But it gives you, I'm right there with
Yeah,
you.
that's
You
the
can
buying
spend
power.
34,
Joe, hang on.
but
Tammy,
you're going to show
Tammy,
25.
I'll wait for
You were
next.
next. Okay, so there is a plan to refresh uniforms for this school year. It's not, so the 25,000,
Well, that's, it's
Didn't
not
make
in
the
this
cut.
budget, it's not in the cut.
It
It's not
didn't
in
make the
budget.
cut. That's a backup plan. That's something that didn't
not
make
here.
this budget. It's done through the conversations, when everybody comes to the table and says, what do we need?
okay, but Mr.
Doesn't make
Lipinski, we had a parent that came and talked about this quite recently, about the uniforms in some sports not being up to par. So obviously you're the athletic director, you will know for sure what sports need uniforms, because we don't want our student athletes going out and looking ratty when they go out to play. So, I mean, if we need these uniforms, we need these uniforms. We need to know this information so we can make some decisions.
It was cut out of the budget last year.
Exactly,
I mean,
so I'm looking for a realistic number of sports that you think that we should replace uniforms for.
So we have 4 teams that, as stated there, that got
show you the
uniforms in
slide.
17, 18.
14, okay.
4 teams total. Every other team that we get uniforms for is either finishing year 5, year 6, or year 7 of their current uniforms. We try to recycle them every 5 years for multiple reasons. One, the everyday wear and tear. 5 years is a long time to be
Sliding in the dirt and.
exactly competing, sweating, diving on the ground,
So how many teams
storing.
is that?
16 additional teams. are on either year 5, year 6, or year 7.
So I think what her question is what would it take to get us up to speed in this budget cycle?
Or to get on a cycle, exactly.
Right, so this would be huge. This would allow me to get these 7 teams plus an additional 2 to 3 more teams. So that would be 10 of the 20 right there. And then
I'm sorry, how many would that cover? To the 25,000?
that would cover close to 10 teams, probably about 10 teams.
So you'd need $50,000 basically to cover, to get us back into the cycle.
Not necessarily, because certain teams, you have to get more uniforms than others, and they cost more than others. So, this was trying to break it into.
So it's $25,000, but with a $34,000 buying power, and you believe that these 10 teams need the uniforms. Like if we're trying to pace this out and say, this year we're gonna cover 4, the next 4, the next 4, to get on a better cycle, but we need to establish uniforms now, you're saying that you would recommend it for the 10 teams, or did all 10 teams need it now?
All 10.
Okay, that's all I
John,
wanna know.
Hang on.
I'm going to piggyback on Ms. McInerney's question, and perhaps I can put it in a little different style, which sometimes it isn't the best. How much money do you need, and why haven't we seen a presentation if you had a wish list to cover
They
everything?
say this
what
every
you would
budget
need?
year.
Every
year.
Where is it here right now? I want to see if you had a wish list to get uniforms, why is it not before us? And whose decision was it to keep this line at $38,000? The same as last year. Whose decision? Was it yours, Mr. Shabro? Was it the superintendent?
Because
Yeah.
So
I
we
mean,
have the number to give you to get what Mr. Lipinski said. He has itemized every jersey, every pair of shorts. We could show you that right now. But again,
That's what I'm asking for.
we have it. Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll get it for you.
Dr. Parker's pulling it
We'll
up,
get that for you.
pulling it up right now.
You have a question? Are you
Mine-
done?
I'll finish up, I got one more follow-up. We run tight budgets, but the one place we cut every single year is in sports. And some of it is regard to safety, some is appearance. We run great athletes here, and we're a mess.
Joe, this year, 1 year ago, we had members of this board chuckle when we said, well, let's use throwback uniforms. Let's use the oldies, because we'll call it throwback day. We had a $70,000+ line item, and in one fell swoop, in a matter of a 5-minute conversation, it was cut in half. So we have been presenting this, so it just got cut. But we did present, we have this information to give you, but you're absolutely right, things get cut.
Different year, different board.
Okay, Wendy, you had a comment or question?
Are you releasing the floor?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to take a step back from that one. So, couple quick things. Would you say that if you gave us a total number for uniforms to get us up to speed and to look at this, and maybe this question is meant for Anthony, could that be considered a capital expenditure? Or is that a reoccurring expense that you wouldn't capitalize? And then one of the reasons why I ask that is because, first of all, it's a large dollar amount. We have not been funding it to the level that we should be because for a variety of reasons, which is a different conversation. But we are hearing about this. We have had this conversation, and I can tell probably by the look on your face, it's not a capital expenditure. You would be uncomfortable with that.
But there's, I mean, if the board wants to get on a replacement cycle with the information that athletics is already given, that has not made it into the superintendent's proposed as is now, to get on that cycle, you would want to add the money.
Would you say it's a reoccurring expenditure?
It is, and there could be a way to get
That's where I'm
onto that
going.
replacement cycle a little bit earlier. It's too early to tell, but if part of this was or wasn't added into 2021, come spring of this year, when we take a look at end-of-year projects, if the board had money that we're projecting at fiscal year end to buy into some of this, that's another opportunity where we could purchase some of them. But again, that would be a one-shot deal that doesn't get these uniforms on the replacement cycle that we're all kind of saying needs to be looked at. But quick infusion, X number of teams, if we
Right.
have money year end.
To that point of the quick infusion, this is not popular, and it's probably not even, I don't know if it's doable, but, you know, we have a waste management fund that is designated for recreational use. And you know what? There's a lot of money in that waste management fund. And if we want to have that conversation with the town, if you want to keep our budget numbers low, and we want to pass along a budget that we all can, you know, put through this town and hold on to staff, we can't have it all. Our athletic budget it's a large budget, but it's not large enough. And maybe we have that conversation. Pull some out of the waste management fund, get these kids what they need, and let us look at our budget somewhere else.
I'll make the presentation to the council.
I'll be right there in front of you.
So I have a couple comments and a question. First of all, I've asked this before, and I'm gonna ask it again because I don't remember the answer. Could we rename the field trips? Because that is very misleading for people, and they're like, why are you
Sure.
spending $100,000 on field trips for high school students? Well, we're not, it's athletic transportation. I think that's much more transparent than field trips, because it just causes a lot of confusion. So if we could rename that, that would be greatly appreciated.
On what page you referring to?
It's
Oh, on the
It's
slide.
55,100, 55,100 field trips, 102,000.
I thought you were referring to in the budget book somewhere.
Oh, no, well,
But it
I'm
might-
sure it is in the
it
budget book,
comes
and I know
through.
it's labeled that way there too, because I've asked before. So the other thing, I completely agree, and I argued this last year, we need, you know, I had an athlete that graduated last year, and he was a tall child, and he had a medium shirt that barely touched his shorts. So if he reached up, he was giving a belly shot to everybody, which wasn't an issue because he was a boy, but I'm sure some of the girls had the same problem. And I completely agree, we need to give more money. There needs to be more money, I'm not saying we need to give it. My question to you is, I know we have the potential for advertising at the field now. How much do we generate with that? Because again, I have lots of people say to me, I would love to advertise, but I don't know where it's at, I don't know how to get to it. So I'm a big believer in God helps those that help themselves. Could we, I think we would even generate more income from this if we said to people, this advertising goes straight to our uniform recycle fee. So is there a way to do that? Is there a way to get that out to the public more? I mean, what do we need to do to generate more income in that? And how much have we generated, I guess is my next question.
I believe there's only been 2 banners.
That's it.
And that's like $1,000 or?
Yeah, I think total of the cost of the
Correct.
banner is the 100 and the rest is the donation part.
Okay.
I know it's 2 and it's around $2,000.
Okay, because I, you know, the waste management's a great Band-Aid to get us like up to speed, but then we still need a plan, you know.
You always need a plan, but if you're talking about a quick infusion of money, my point to
Right.
your point was, I'd rather take the
But
quick
I-
infusion of money outside of our operational
Sure, but I think
budget.
if we go to them and say, we need this, but this is our plan to replenish and go forward.
That's-
And, you know, like you said, if we have something designated, that that's what it's for, then that's what we'll use it for, and we won't have this, again, when we have to keep cutting this or that. And then my last comment or question is, parents would be willing to buy uniforms for their child. And that, I get the understanding that, you know, well, Johnny's mom can't buy his, so how is it fair? But if we could do that, if we could provide parents that option to, you know, let them have their child's uniform when they're done, that would generate revenue, you know, charge them $10 more than what the uniform costs. But it also would make a longer lifespan of the uniforms we have, if we don't have to use all of them every year.
I believe that contradicts your own policy, though. We can't supplant the budget.
Well, but if we're,
That's why, because we've had people.
We buy I mean, I don't know what they do for tennis now, but I know I bought
You know,
tennis
we've
shirts.
had people say, hey, listen.
The Nike
you know,
tennis
we've
shirts.
had we've had coaches
We
get them stuff.
that have said, listen, take my stipend and put it towards the kids' uniforms. And we've had to tell them no.
Well, there's a difference between supplant.
Also, the issue you run into is the uniform styles change. You can't, you know, you have a certain uniform that people buy, and then some kids graduate, and then you go to buy that uniform 3, 4, 5 years later, they don't make it anymore, and now you're back to having to have everybody buy again. That's one of the other issues we run into. And then also uniform regulations changed through the NFHS, where you can only have certain size numbers or certain with stripes, and it changes every few years, which they do on purpose, I'm sure, for the vendors to
money.
make money.
Do you want to share your plan? The uniform search?
Right, so these were
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
the male, female
I just wanna make sure
sports for
that-
the 3 seasons that we would look to start with. And that's the quote I got from our vendor. And then the $9,000, as you can see on the side there, is what we get in return that can be put right back into purchasing additional uniforms for teams. And that's something where I could take one of the more expensive sports and I could do the homes one year and the aways another year, something like that. Or I can take a sport where it's not as many uniforms and I can get full sets for a couple additional sports. There's a few different ways that you can go about spending the money. We would just look at the need of the program, the most dire need of which program needs them the most after these additional sets.
So this is 7 teams, not 10, because you told me the 25,000.
Well, the 9,000,
Go
Oh,
back
because
to
then the
the-
9,000 would,
You can use-
okay,
Yes.
okay.
correct.
You know, and I just also want to point out, this is the bare bones of the uniform. I know, for example, for soccer, we go to play other schools and they have long sleeve jerseys. Our kids are out there, look like the misfits, you know, one's got a green, one's got a white, and there are some rules now that they have to all have a white or whatever, you know, but they all show up in soccer warm-ups, you know, our kids are out there and, you know, whatever they grabbed this morning before they left.
This is the
So
bare bones.
it-
In
it's-
order to get it up
this
there,
is
you're
the
looking
bare
at the
bones.
bottom.
Yes.
This is the bare bones.
Well, and again, we started during this budget process at probably 78,000. Is that what I had you with
I believe
initially?
that.
And then I said, yeah, no, we
I
can't
believe
do
that.
it. What do you absolutely have to have? Just like we did with the elementary, what do you have to have? And he was able to bring it back to the additional 25,000. And I was trying to.
You had to make choices, you had to make choices, and as a parent said last night, something in the budget's important to everyone.
So on to that question, you read my mind.
I know it,
Okay.
'cause I've been
On to
cleaning
that, band uniforms,
Right.
okay?
I have that
Right,
quote
yeah,
too,
that's
if you'd like to hear that. I
79,000.
have that quote
I
too,
know.
because I
Yeah. No, I
presented
know.
it. That quote there
79.
is about 70, I'll
You
quote.
read my mind.
And
Those
that's
hats-
already on my radar
Those
for the
hats are
future.
gonna last many more years.
Well, like I said, I don't know, and Cindy, you might be able to tell me, I know they're at least 15 years old.
I wanna say, the first time they marched was Memorial Day 2004.
Okay.
So, yeah.
To outfit our band, is $72,150.
72,000?
$72,000, yeah.
And the the band has done, not to steal off of athletics, but the band has stopgapped over the last few years by buying black bibs to replace black pants. But you can only do that with the pants. You can't do that with the overlay, and you certainly can't do it with the hat.
The
And
outfit
hats,
it's $480 per person.
yeah, and the hats are on their last leg. And
Yeah.
you can't you can't just buy stopgap hats because then they don't match whatever.
And that's
So,
why I
yeah.
wanted to bring up that question of, I know it's a long shot, but when I say something like, you know,
Just so you know.
other funding, I mention that because when you have a uniform conversation, now you have a band conversation. And those are large, authentic numbers that are long overdue. And they're long overdue. But every year we sit here in the 11th hour and we put through a budget and it doesn't make it. And we're forced to make these decisions, and we're never gonna make up $150,000 in uniforms. No way.
Can I just piggyback, because there's a couple of things I want to, so that's a fantastic idea, but I think we need to add this to the budget. I don't know why we're looking, okay, but if we add that, where are we going to take it from? We tell the town, we need to be equipping our athletes appropriately. This is what we need to do so. If you cannot put this in our Board of Education money, then you need to consider it taking it from waste management, because we have to pick and choose our priorities, and if we want to be supporting the sports in our town, that's what they should do. So I would completely be at that town council meeting, because, we know how much they love the turf field and how much they want to talk about sports. Well, this is what we need in order to be supporting our student athletes properly. So that's number one. Number two is, when the turf field opened, there was a huge discussion on this whole fundraising program, and people were talking about selling bricks that families could, and I ran a program like that at Westcon, so I completely know how to do that. Selling banners, selling ads, selling all these things. And I don't ever remember that being Mr. Lipinski's responsibility. I thought there was going to be a committee that was going to be formed to do that.
I'm
Okay,
actually
so
on that committee.
so
So is
who-
Mr. Dahl.
Okay,
and-
so who is then every year putting out advertising packets to businesses saying,
Nobody.
please support
Nobody.
our because that's what we need to do, and we would fill our stadium. People will, they know how much exposure that gets them to their business. And that is a good source of revenue when you tie in your whole advertising program together with a whole bunch of different options, a whole bunch of different levels, what you call this type of sponsorship, what you call that type of sponsorship. That needs to be done, because, and I would absolutely support that money going right back into the athletic department, not give it to the board and give it back. It goes to fund the athletic department, because, come on now, this is
Well,
crazy.
There's another
This field has been there for how
thought
long?
here, and it's in the budget presentation here for the all-school musical.
Right, yep.
We generate roughly $25,000 a year in gate revenue, and that gets put into the general fund. Now, following the same principles that we just was presented last night, we said that we were going to take those revenues generated from ticket sales from the all-school musical and leave it in the all-school musical
And Dr.
line to
Parker
pay for
told us about
royalties and
that.
pay for production of the show the following year.
Yeah, don't take it out and put it back.
Years
Allocate it.
ago, this is going back 10-plus years ago, we used to keep those monies generated from ticket sales were put back into the athletic account, so we could buy things to offset the type of things.
Absolutely.
And now, those monies are just put in the revenue line, and it's into the general account. So that's another thought, that we have roughly about $25,000 per year that could be put into, talking about a line, uniforms every year, that type of thing, to do that. That's just another thought that aligns with our thought process from last
People
night.
will spend money if they know what that money is going for. So if you have businesses in town who want to support athletics, and they know that buying a banner ad is going to make $1,000, $2,000, whatever that banner is that goes straight into athletics, that's something that they will buy into. So I support that. This is our athletic field. It should go back to athletics.
Yes,
To be
Still
clear,
gonna-
Right,
I
no, that's what I was gonna,
I just want to be clear
It's
that,
just
to that
taking it out of one
point,
pot, putting it in
what
another.
you're saying is
Right,
much more transparent,
Yes.
and to your point, people know where their
Doesn't go
money is
to the
going and
general
understand that.
fund.
But also, on a budgetary impact,
We
is
have
it
to
fair
find
to
that revenue.
say
Yeah,
that
right.
you're taking that revenue
have
and
to
you're
find it.
pulling
You
it
have
out
to
of
make it
revenue,
from
out of the
somewhere else.
you're reallocating it. It's a hit,
Yep.
period. So you can label it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be
You
a
won't have that
reduction
revenue to
this.
count in your general
That's
fund.
all I'm
Right.
saying.
you're still
Like the
25 grand
10,000.
short.
But then you won't be putting as much money towards athletics,
I'm
because
just-
they will be self-funding. So that money
And it
is
still all
still,
comes out of the same pot. I mean,
It does.
it's just semantics at that point. I mean, because it's still all coming from the
It's
same
still
pot
all
of money.
coming from the same, but to your point, that's a different conversation. I'm not going to belabor the point of, going on about the turf committee. It's met for a year and a half. There's been approximately 8 meetings. And there's been work really to get the advertising out there, whether it's been aggressive enough to be as successful as what people,
and I don't mean to,
hear.
and I did not mean to call you out, and
please,
I
got
hope you did not
thick
take
skin.
it that
Don't you worry
way.
about it. So it doesn't matter. So, but we have a long way to go. We have a
So
long
I
way
think this is great discussion for next Thursday night for the budget negotiations. I think we need to get through this. It's 10 of 10, so I think we need to kind of focus back on
One
this.
other quick issue,
Make it
not
quick.
related to this.
Okay, and then you can have a little more.
to see your
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna turn it off again.
Oh,
Who's
Lord.
Oh,
Who's cooking?
you need to
Ellie, there's Ellie. It's all confidential. Ellie's like,
I'm so glad I'm still having email issues.
Everybody close your eyes
all this confidential stuff is flashing on the screen.
Oh,
Ellie's having a heart attack.
Close your eyes.
Everybody everybody turn around.
Okay, page 30. What about page 30?
All right, Joe
Joe had a comment.
I've also heard that if the women's softball team is playing on our field, that we can't use the artificial turf practice field because they're launching balls into that area, and we need netting for that.
Well, no, it's game days. It's, if there's a JV softball game scheduled for the JV softball field and there's a lacrosse game going on the north turf field, foul balls go into that. So I moved the JV softball games over to the varsity softball field on those days. Usually it takes about three or four games where they get moved from the JV field to the varsity field.
Do we have an idea what it would cost to put up safety netting on that corner of the
Speak to that.
field?
I've actually been in contact with H.I. Stone to get proposals. The problem is the span of the poles and how thick the diameter would have to be to bridge the gap from the walkway all the way north.
So we're talking footings and those type of things?
Exactly right. So he's working on those numbers, and I should have them later this week.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, page 30.
Wait a minute, I think Anthony needed to go through the object codes, right?
Do you need them?
We have them in
Yeah, but it might answer a lot of questions like
Okay,
you did
go
with
ahead.
Schaghticoke, correct?
Sure. Again, the certified is being recalculated. The non-certified there are two less paras in that build this year. One has been flipped to a grant and remains at the high school, and one has been redeployed. The increase in professional services there of $9,791 is mainly driven by a $6,700 increase in guidance, and I believe that's related to Naviance. There are reductions in that professional services for those Chromebooks that were there, the tech licenses for those in previous years that they're no longer. In the property services, there's less money in the request that pertain to repairs, and that's based on looking at actuals. The other services, the big drivers there are related to the transportation, I believe. Some of that within athletics. The supplies there, a lot of the, as Mr. Cobb went through, we have less world language and science texts that were requested in 1920. Now we have need for more social studies texts. And there's about 5,000 of that a $5,000 increase in supplies related to SPED supplies, and there is no, as we just went through, there is no increase related to athletic uniforms in this presentation. The capital, the realignments there, that's where Chromebooks were purchased from out of the high school, and I believe there's some adjustments and some more money requested for furniture in that capital line that still comes in at only $291 over the previous year increase.
And dues and fees went up a lot, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The dues and fees up by $33.60.
And those are what?
Sure, I'm looking at those right.
I have it for you.
You can
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's an increase of $1,000 for athletics, CAS CIEC, and our SWC tournament fees. It's a $50 increase from our social studies to be a part of the National Council for Social Studies. It's $2,100 increase in dues and fees for science. That is our online subscription for honors and a WebAssign for chem and physics, and it also serves as our physics textbook, which is a 25.47 increase. And there is a $120 increase in the world language, and that, as Mr. Krepo was talking about, for seal by literacy and so forth, to take care of that.
And these are more based on actuals, right? I think that's what how the dues went down at Schaghticoke, because it was more in line with what was actually spent. These are the actuals.
Right, and here at the high school, Mr. Scrooge just went through 4 individual areas an increase for $120, an increase for $2,190, an increase for $50, and an increase of $1,000. That puts out to the $3360. Total requested more for dues and fees at the high school.
So the certified salaries, is that part of your
Yep.
refiguring?
Yep.
Or is that's going to go down too?
It'll change. Yep. That certified number is being recalculated.
All the way through.
All the way
All the
through.
way.
Yep.
All right, so it's just 3.42 will go down.
Page 30. 31. 32. 33.
The map, that was you talked about a couple of textbooks that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's low inventory in some of our textbooks, specifically some Algebra 2 books that we need. And again, textbooks are not cheap. That Algebra 2 book is $100.
Yeah, go ahead.
In science, the pupil transportation field trip is going up by 2,000.
Well, yes, last year, we just,
It's 0 to 2,000.
yes, that's for Science Olympics down in, at Yale.
Okay.
That's for Project Lead the Way
Okay.
type of things, but yes.
Okay. The equipment at 400%.
Yes, in 57,400.
Yeah.
Yep.
57,400. Those are vernier lab sensors that basically hook in, the current ones that we have hook into our desktops that are used in our science and our physics classes to take data readings and then it's charts. Unfortunately, our desktops are beyond updates, and these vernier lab sensors would be compatible with Chromebooks.
Okay. And I'm sorry, this 56410 social text at 134%, is that also
I'm sorry,
replaced?
did we
I'm sorry,
skip-
we're under social
Oh,
studies?
social, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right, I'm
Yeah, I have
mumbling.
you.
The 134%, that's also new cost of.
Those are the US history books.
Textbook
Yeah.
we're talking
Yep.
about. Joe's textbook.
Oh, Joe's book.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm good.
Forever.
Thank
You sure we got enough there?
The one that you ripped the pages off.
To the per pupil number.
240 at $87 is a big bit of that, yeah.
Yeah.
241.
Yes.
Because you have one.
That's for the repair to the page.
Page 34.
That was a freebie, probably.
Page 34, the music certified, first line, salary certified, it's up 12,000 is.
Well, that's
gonna be-
that's
So
gonna
we
be
did all
readjusted.
the entire
That's-
certified throughout the book, we're taking a reexamination.
okay.
We'll have
That's
new
part of
papers.
that.
So we're gonna get back to you.
You'll have new papers.
And the music equipment, you said it was,
Music stands and chairs.
Stands and chairs.
Yep, they need to be replaced
that were
periodically.
taken out,
Yeah.
the ones that were lost last year, right?
Anything else on 34?
I'm sorry, can I ask one question
Yeah.
on the business 56110, the 140% supplies, this is not a text, so this, what does that go
That's
towards?
an additional $700 for classroom supplies and toners for the
Okay.
printers.
So the percentage was the dollar amount.
Correct, it's a $700 increase, that's correct.
Page 35.
Just to show me.
The supplies, tech-related, it's 56,500. My eyes are failing me this
Where are we,
morning.
I'm sorry?
Sorry.
6,500.
Supplies, tech
Down,
related.
second line from the bottom.
Yeah,
What
sorry,
page?
I'm, my,
34.
In the library
35.
section.
20,
Library.
35, page 35.
As we shout, as we
I
shout.
got- I got-
Skip
Yeah, we're all shouting at it.
We're getting crazy.
Where are we?
sorry,
Page
56,500.
35, thank you.
Second line from the bottom.
Second line from the bottom, under library.
Yes.
Yes.
225% increase, yes. Okay, that is for library, this is an increase of $1,800. This is what we're talking about, the makerspace in the Library Media Center. This is to get some increased in tech-related mechanisms that our students will use during their makerspace.
That's great.
And if you also take a look in 56110, there's an increase of 66.67% or $600. Those are consumables for those makerspaces as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Page 36. Tammy?
Under O admin, 57,400,
Yep.
the 99.49% in equipment.
Sure. The bulk of that is 5 new cafeteria tables that are broken, and they're at $1,300 apiece.
Okay, in 55-100, the pupil transportation, is that the after-school buses or all travel?
Hold on. What,
Intramural?
He's at intramurals.
That's the travel for sports.
Under athletics. It should say interscholastic.
Yes.
No, it should say
Scholastic.
Scholastic, yes, it
So
should be.
55,100.
Yep.
It should say.
Yes, that's.
Is that after-school buses or
No.
is that all travel?
That's travel for our athletic program.
So that's the line that I'll be recoding, and we saw it in the presentation, the budget book here, that won't say pupil transportation, no, that would be relabeled to athletic transportation.
Yeah.
It
That'd be
shares
great.
the same object code as that transportation in other areas, but here on the budget book, so anybody who grabs it from the same source, it'll be athletic transportation.
Okay, so where does the after-school buses come?
Not, it's.
They're in the
cities.
general
There's
transportation.
a general transportation.
Right.
Anything else on 36? Page 37. Tammy?
Under student activity, 56,100, the supplies went down for the activity. So is that just, again, taking
In
a?
inventory.
Inventory.
Yeah, in inventory.
Thank you.
Page 38.
I have a question, and maybe this was gone over, but towards the bottom of the page, BSE 0111, salary non-certified, it's gone down $27,000, and I didn't see a change in staffing. Is that less staff, or is that just
There's no change in staffing for the 2021 request, but the change is there are 2 less paras there than when we built the 1920. When I say 2 less, 1 has been redeployed to another location, and 1 is actually now paid out of the grant. But when we built the budget for 1920, the current year, it was built for 2. That's why you see, even though we're given the paras who are there, their increases, the year-to-year is down, because those have been redeployed, 1 redeployed and 1
And one
is now paid out of the
reallocated
grant.
out of the grant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just
Okay.
have one, and this will be my final one for this. SPED, 57,340. Computer tech hardware, is that just a device that was needed for 1 year and is just not needed anymore for
Those
this
were
year?
That's where the Chromebooks were last year.
Okay.
For the special ed, and
And we're moving all
they
the
were moving them
Chromebooks.
to Brandon's budget.
Sped, it'll go to the sped. If it's
I'm sorry?
sped,
What's the 56,100?
What do you mean?
Those are classroom supplies again that we need.
For the SPED
Correct.
classrooms?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I need to go back to elementary just for 1
Yeah,
second.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is going back to elementary. The head teacher stipends that we are requesting, can you just remind me where that is located in the budget?
So you would have found it in a memo from the superintendent, from maybe operations, where we listed, because it didn't make the cut, it's not in the budget. So all of those memos that
Okay.
were brought
Yes.
forward were
Yeah,
part of our
'cause
larger
okay.
discussions with
I thought you
associated
talked,
costs.
I thought you talked about it in the
Budget drive?
presentation.
We don't have
It
them,
was-
only at
it's
Sarah
on the
Noble and
budget
third,
drive.
fourth,
So
and
you
fifth.
didn't put it in
There's
this year?
no
All right.
additional
I have-
staffing at all.
All right.
in,
No, I just thought that
Gen
it
Ed.
was gonna be in it
Yeah,
because of
Didn't
those budget
make it.
discussions, and it didn't make the
it.
cut.
Didn't
Okay, well, that
make it.
answers that
And there were
question.
other dollar amounts in all of those memos that also
Yes,
have been changed.
I remember.
Okay, any other questions?
on that one.
Okay, we will open up public participation. Anyone signed up? Nope. Anyone want to speak?
Can I just make one comment?
Sure. You got 3 minutes, Meg.
To Tammy's comment about things that, and there were several things that didn't make it in, that we're discovering didn't make it in. I guess in the past, we were used to seeing, this was our wish list. These are the things I cut before I even brought it to you. And the public saw that as well. Can we have that for the public as well as for the town council and the Board of Finance? So they can see all the things you cut before you even brought it to this table? Before the board even had a chance to vote on it? Because that is something that it's a fight every year. unfortunately, and I'm so happy for the discussions that happened tonight, and for the fact that there are some Board of Finance members in the room tonight, as well as Town Council, to have heard just how in-depth the discussions actually take place and how seriously you all take this. Because I don't think them not being here in prior years has shown them how serious you all take this and how much work you put into it. So I'm very thankful for the discussions that we had tonight. But if we could have that list
Absolutely.
of all the things that didn't make it before you even put it to the board, that would
See
be
what that
appreciated.
percentage is.
Part of it, if you look at last year's.
Yes,
part
right,
of
it was one of the, right, it's usually one of the first slides to show.
Yes.
This is
It
what we
is.
wanted to do, and these are the things that
Exactly.
you won't even see in here, but we do want them.
Megan, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay, we will recess till next Tuesday, January 28th.